Before history learned to write, something learned to build. Across windswept plains and buried beneath layers of time, colossal structures still stand, precise, deliberate, and disturbingly advanced. They were raised by people we are told were primitive, yet the stones tell a different story. How did they shape rock with such accuracy? Why do these sites align with the sky, the earth, and forces we barely understand today? What knowledge did they possess, and how was it lost? Tonight, we step into the shadows of prehistory to uncover structures that challenge everything we think we know. In the remote plains of central Sudan, where the desert opens into low rocky hills and acacia shadows stretch thin across the ground, stone walls rise in quiet defiance of time. This is Musawwarat es-Sufra, an ancient complex set far from cities, rivers, or obvious strategic value. From a distance, the ruins appear almost accidental, a scattering of sandstone blocks bleached by centuries of sun. But as one approaches, order emerges. Corridors bend deliberately, courtyards unfold into one another. Stairways climb toward platforms whose purpose is no longer clear. At the heart of the site lies the Great Enclosure, one of the most enigmatic architectural achievements of the ancient Meroitic kingdom, dating roughly between the 3rd century BCE and the 3rd century CE. It is vast, maze-like, and unlike any other known structure in the Nile Valley. Unlike temples in Egypt or palaces in Nubia, Musawwarat does not present a single axis or focal point. Instead, it feels recursive, walls leading to more walls, ramps turning back on themselves, open spaces followed by narrow passages. Movement through the complex seems intentional, almost choreographed. Archaeologists agree on certain fundamentals. The site was built by the Meroites, a powerful civilization that rivaled Rome and Egypt in its time. The stonework, inscriptions, and iconography firmly place Musawwarat within this cultural framework. Reliefs depicting elephants, some ceremonial, some seemingly domestic, appear throughout the complex. Nearby, massive hafirs, artificial reservoirs carved into the earth, suggest advanced water management in an otherwise arid landscape. These facts anchor the site in real, measurable history. Yet agreement tends to fracture when purpose is discussed. Unlike traditional temples, Musawwarat lacks a clear central sanctuary. Unlike fortresses, it offers no defensive advantage. Unlike cities, there is little evidence of permanent habitation. Some scholars propose that it was a religious center, possibly dedicated to the lion god Apidamak, whose temple stands nearby. Others suggest it functioned as a pilgrimage site, designed for ritual processions that unfolded over time and space rather than culminating in a single sacred chamber. Then there is the elephant question. The prominence of elephant imagery has led to theories that Musawwarat was a center for elephant training or ceremonial use. Ancient sources describe war elephants in Nubia, and the Great Enclosure's wide ramps and open courtyards could, in theory, accommodate large animals. But no definitive evidence confirms this. No tethering points, no feeding areas, no clear infrastructure one would expect from such a function. The idea remains plausible, but unproven. More speculative interpretations drift further from conventional archaeology. Some researchers note the site's isolation and complexity and wonder whether Musawwarat served as a place of initiation, a symbolic landscape designed to guide participants through stages of knowledge or transformation. Others focus on astronomical alignments, pointing to sight lines and elevated platforms that may correspond to celestial events, though data remains inconclusive. A few fringe theories go further still, suggesting lost engineering knowledge or forgotten cultural influences that predate known Meroitic traditions. What is striking is not any single theory, but the site's resistance to simplification. Musawwarat does not behave like architecture meant solely for utility. It invites movement, repetition, and contemplation. It asks something of the visitor: time, attention, patience. Even in ruin, it feels experiential rather than functional. Standing within the great enclosure today, surrounded by wind and stone and silence, one senses that something intentional once unfolded here, something understood by its builders, but no longer fully accessible to us. Whether ritual, training ground, ceremonial center, or something yet unnamed, Musawwarat as Sufra remains incomplete in our understanding. And perhaps the more enduring question is not what it was, but what kind of knowledge requires a place like this to exist at all. From the windswept plains of Sudan, our journey now turns northward, following the faint traces of history across deserts and valleys, to a site perched high on a ridge overlooking the Elah Valley in modern-day Israel. Here, at Khirbet Qeiyafa, the remains of a fortified settlement rise sharply from the surrounding landscape, a compact cluster of stone walls and carefully laid streets that seem to hold secrets of a society once bustling with life. Unlike sprawling ceremonial complexes like Musawwarat, Khirbet Qeiyafa is concentrated, deliberate, a fortress whose very design invites questions about its purpose and the people who constructed it. The core of Khirbet Qeiyafa, the fortified citadel, is immediately striking. Massive casemate walls, built with precision-cut stones, define its perimeter, while towers punctuate the corners and gates mark carefully controlled entrances. Excavations have revealed two main gates on the western and southern sides, an unusual configuration for settlements of this period, raising immediate questions about defense, trade, and social organization. The settlement dates back to the 10th century BCE, a time often associated with the early monarchic period in the Levant. Yet its precise role within the emerging political landscape remains elusive. Archaeologists suggest that Khirbet Qeiyafa may have been a strategic outpost, guarding the borderlands of a nascent kingdom. Its location, commanding a view over the valley below, certainly supports this interpretation. Inside the walls, evidence of daily life emerges. Stone storage silos, remnants of dwellings, and pottery fragments that hint at domestic routines. Yet the settlement's layout and construction techniques hint at a sophistication that goes beyond simple survival. Every wall, every passage, seems to reflect careful planning, as if the builders anticipated both immediate threats and long-term occupancy. The site also offers tantalizing clues about literacy and administration. Inscriptions discovered on pottery shards, brief, enigmatic texts in an early form of Hebrew, suggest that the inhabitants were not only literate, but actively engaged in record-keeping or communication. If these interpretations are correct, Khirbet Qeiyafa represents one of the earliest known centers of literacy in the region, a potential indicator of centralized authority and complex societal organization. How such knowledge developed here, at the edges of emerging states, remains a topic of ongoing debate. Yet the mysteries deepen when we consider what remains absent. Despite its defensive sophistication, there is little evidence of large-scale industry or wealth accumulation. No monumental palaces or extensive ritual complexes have been uncovered within the core. Some scholars suggest this was a purely military installation, a frontier post designed to monitor and control movement rather than celebrate power. Others wonder if we are missing a larger picture, that beneath the visible ruins lie further structures or layers yet to be excavated, hinting at social, economic, or ceremonial activities that have vanished from the archaeological record. The site's sudden appearance and relatively short period of occupation add another layer of intrigue. Khirbet Qeiyafa seems to have been built quickly, used for only a few generations, and then abandoned. Why construct such a carefully designed fortress only to leave it behind? Was it destroyed in conflict, or did shifting political circumstances render it obsolete? And if so, what broader historical forces were at play in the southern Levant during this era, forces that might have shaped the fate of this enigmatic site? Speculative interpretations naturally emerge alongside mainstream archaeology. Some propose that Khirbet Qeiyafa was more than a military outpost, perhaps a political or administrative center that played a role in early state formation. Others consider its proximity to biblical sites and texts, suggesting connections to narratives preserved in later cultural memory. While there is no definitive evidence linking the settlement to specific historical figures, the alignment of architecture, inscriptions, and strategic location hints at a society negotiating power, identity, and survival on the edge of history. As we trace the contours of the walls and peer down the narrow streets where ancient inhabitants once moved, the questions multiply. What daily lives unfolded here, shielded by stone and vigilance? How did these people relate to neighboring settlements, and what knowledge did they carry that has been lost to time? The physical remains speak of human ingenuity, of planning and foresight, but their meaning, social, political, and spiritual, remains tantalizingly out of reach. In this ridgetop citadel, as in Musawwarat, the line between the known and the unknown is finely drawn. We can document the stones, measure the walls, decipher inscriptions, and reconstruct probable scenarios. But the full story, the motivations and experiences of those who built and inhabited this place, is only partially visible. Khirbet Qeiyafa core stands as a reminder that even in well-studied regions, some discoveries resist neat categorization. They invite us to wonder, to question, and to acknowledge that history often preserves fragments while withholding its full narrative. What has vanished from this ridgetop settlement? What knowledge, decisions, or events led to its rise and fall? The answers remain just out of reach, waiting for patient observation and careful excavation, leaving the mind to roam among possibilities, suspended between the tangible traces of the past and the mysteries they silently guard. As we leave the ridgetop citadel of Khirbet Qeiyafa behind, descending into the rolling landscapes of the Levant, we arrive at a far older testament to human ingenuity, one that predates fortifications and written inscriptions. Nestled on a windswept plateau near modern-day Petra, the site of Beidha emerges quietly from the earth, a cluster of low stone platforms, circular foundations, and carefully arranged stones that hint at a civilization still grasping the first contours of permanent settlement. Unlike the imposing walls of Khirbet Qeiyafa, here there are no towers, no gates, no inscriptions to anchor us in time. The mystery of Beidha lies in its subtlety, in the understated precision of its construction, and in the questions that seem to radiate from the very ground. Beidha is part of a larger complex of prehistoric settlements dating back to the pre-pottery Neolithic B period, roughly 7,500 to 6,500 BCE, a time when humans in this region were transitioning from nomadic hunter-gatherers to sedentary agriculturalists. Excavations have revealed stone-built platforms and circular stone houses, many of them meticulously arranged around open courtyards. The platforms themselves, some elevated and carefully leveled, appear to have been more than simple foundations. They suggest intention, perhaps ritual significance, or functional adaptation to environmental conditions. Every stone seems chosen and placed with care, each arrangement deliberate, hinting at a community deeply engaged with its surroundings and its emerging social structures. Archaeologists have long debated the purpose of these platforms. Some propose they were the bases of dwellings, providing stability for lightweight structures built of mud brick or perishable materials. Others suggest communal or ritual use, platforms that might have supported ceremonial gatherings, storage areas for sacred or valuable goods, or even spaces for early forms of social negotiation. The absence of direct evidence leaves room for speculation, yet the very consistency of the layouts across multiple platforms indicates a shared cultural logic, a system of construction that transcends mere utility. Among the most striking features of Beidha are its circular stone foundations, some partially buried, some rising slightly above the ground. They form patterns that hint at a carefully considered spatial organization, with internal divisions suggesting differentiated use of space within each structure. How did these early builders conceive of community? Were these spaces domestic, sacred, or both? And why choose circular forms, a shape that resonates across prehistoric settlements in the Near East, from Anatolia to the Jordan Valley? Could it reflect cosmological beliefs, practical adaptations, or an aesthetic sensibility that we can only glimpse through the remnants of stone? The site also presents an intriguing juxtaposition of continuity and innovation. While the Beidha platforms and stone constructions suggest permanence, the settlement itself is not monumental in scale, nor is it fortified. It seems intentionally modest, yet every detail reflects skill and foresight. Stone channels hint at water management. Shallow depressions may have served as storage pits or work areas, and the arrangement of stones within the compound implies knowledge of weight, balance, and stability. How much of this knowledge was intuitive, passed down through generations, and how much represents conscious experimentation, an early science of architecture and settlement planning that has largely vanished? Beyond the practical, the mystery deepens in the absence of overt ritual artifacts. There are no elaborate statues, no inscriptions, no traces of written language, and yet the careful leveling of platforms, the alignment of structures, and the repetition of certain forms suggest a symbolic or spiritual dimension. Were these early communities encoding meaning into their architecture, a message that time has obscured? Some scholars have speculated that certain alignments of platforms correspond to seasonal solar events, pointing to a rudimentary awareness of celestial cycles. Others suggest that the circular forms themselves may have reflected a worldview, a conceptual framework for understanding the human place in the environment. Yet, without definitive evidence, these remain tantalizing possibilities, fragments of a story only partially recoverable from the archaeological record. Equally compelling is the broader context of Beidha within the Neolithic Revolution. This was an era of transformation, when humans were learning to cultivate plants, domesticate animals, and establish the first permanent communities. Beidha's stone platforms testify to a society experimenting with permanence, experimenting with space, and negotiating its relationship with both the land and its own social structures. The site invites reflection on the interplay between necessity and choice. How early humans balanced survival with creativity, utility with symbolism, and practical innovation with emerging cultural identity. Speculative theories naturally arise alongside mainstream interpretations. Some propose that the precision and repetition of Beidha's stone platforms hint at knowledge or practices now lost to time, a proto-architecture perhaps, or early urban planning encoded in small deliberate gestures of construction. Others wonder whether these structures were part of a network of ritual sites across the Levant, connected by cultural or spiritual understanding that remains invisible to us. Whatever the truth, Beidha resists simple categorization. Its stones speak quietly, leaving traces without conclusions, and its presence challenges us to consider the depth of human ingenuity long before the rise of empires or monumental architecture. As we walk among the low platforms and circular foundations, tracing the contours of stones shaped millennia ago, one cannot help but feel a profound sense of connection and a sense of distance. These were people experimenting with permanence, social organization, and perhaps even meaning itself, yet their intentions, beliefs, and daily lives remain largely unknowable. We can measure the walls, catalog the platforms, and analyze artifacts, but the essence of the community, the choices, the ideas, the rituals, lingers just beyond our understanding. Beidha reminds us, as do Khirbet, Qeiyafa, and Musawwarat, that history is never fully transparent. It is a mosaic of fragments, of deliberate actions frozen in stone, and of questions that continue to haunt the landscape. What compelled these early builders to rise from nomadism and create something enduring? What knowledge did they possess that has been lost, and what was encoded in the very layout of their settlement? The answers remain elusive, leaving the mind to wander across centuries, imagining lives lived with intention and insight, yet now reduced to silent platforms and carefully placed stones. In the quiet of this ancient plateau, amid the wind and the dust, the mystery of Beidha endures, a whisper from the past, inviting observation, reflection, and imagination. The settlement speaks in fragments, but its message is clear. Human curiosity, ingenuity, and the desire to shape the world are older than history itself. And yet, for all we uncover, the full story remains just out of reach, waiting patiently for those who follow in our footsteps, ready to wonder what else has been hidden beneath the stones. From the quiet stone platforms of Beidha, our exploration now moves eastward, across deserts and valleys, to the fertile plains of eastern India, where a different kind of ancient ingenuity quietly reveals itself. Here lies Sisupalgarh, one of the earliest known urban settlements on the Indian subcontinent, its origins stretching back to the Proto-Phase, roughly the late 2nd millennium BCE. Unlike the compact stone arrangements of Beidha, Sisupalgarh unfolds as a sprawling plan of rectilinear streets, fortified walls, and carefully delineated sectors, an early experiment in urban design that suggests an unprecedented level of social organization. Even before stepping inside the remains of the settlement, the scale is immediately striking. From a distance, the site is framed by a massive embankment, a continuous wall of laterite stone that stretches for nearly 3 kilometers, punctuated by gateways at the cardinal points. The wall, though eroded and partially collapsed, speaks to an understanding of geometry, defense, and planning. Inside, the settlement is divided into a grid of streets and blocks, many of which contain evidence of dwellings, workshops, and communal spaces. The precision of the layout is remarkable for a society still considered proto-urban, raising questions about the level of technical knowledge and social coordination required to execute such a plan. Archaeologists suggest that Sisupalgarh served as a fortified administrative or commercial hub, controlling the surrounding agricultural land and facilitating trade. Excavations have uncovered pottery, beads, and metal tools, as well as traces of streets and drainage systems that hint at organized civic management. Yet, despite the apparent functionality, much remains enigmatic. The settlement's sheer scale, the sophistication of its fortifications, and the uniformity of its planning seem almost incongruous with the historical context. How did a proto-urban community acquire the knowledge and resources to construct such a complex so early in South Asian history? The gateways of Sisupalgarh are especially intriguing. Each is framed by heavy stone blocks, arranged in precise alignments, some suggesting a defensive function, others a ceremonial or symbolic purpose. Were these gateways simply points of access, or did they serve as markers of status, ritual, or cosmological orientation? Some researchers have noted potential alignments with celestial events, hinting at an awareness of astronomical cycles that may have influenced the settlement's orientation and construction. While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, the possibility that early urban planning incorporated both practical and symbolic considerations adds another layer to the site's intrigue. Inside the walls, the urban grid is unexpectedly sophisticated. Streets intersect at near-perfect right angles. Blocks are proportioned with remarkable consistency, and evidence of drainage channels indicates a concern for sanitation and water management. These features suggest a level of civil engineering that seems advanced for the period, raising further questions about the technological knowledge and organizational structures of the society that built it. How were decisions made? labor coordinated, and materials mobilized? And what cultural, political, or spiritual motivations guided such a meticulously ordered environment? Beyond the practical, Sisupalgarh hints at social complexity. Excavations reveal differentiated spaces within blocks, larger compounds likely reserved for leaders or elites, smaller dwellings for craftsmen or common residents. The organization of space suggests a hierarchy, yet there is little evidence of monumental temples or palaces. Was religion expressed subtly through spatial planning, or did it play a more peripheral role? Were communal or ritual areas integrated into the urban design in ways that remain invisible to us today? The answers are tantalizingly incomplete. Speculative interpretations emerge naturally alongside mainstream explanations. Some suggest that Sisupalgarh's precision reflects a society with knowledge of surveying and geometry that has left no written record, a lost technical sophistication that predates the major urban centers of the subcontinent. Others wonder whether the settlement's layout reflects not only functional needs but a conceptual vision, an attempt to impose cosmic or social order upon the land. Could these streets and blocks encode a worldview, a proto-civic philosophy, or early experiments in urban harmony? While evidence is limited, the questions themselves underscore the remarkable intellectual and organizational capacities of these early builders. Equally mysterious is the settlement's fate. After centuries of occupation, Sisupalgarh was gradually abandoned, leaving behind its carefully constructed streets and walls as silent witnesses to a vanished world. Why was such an advanced proto-urban center deserted? Environmental change, shifting trade routes, or social upheaval may have played a role, but no definitive explanation has emerged. The settlement's sudden absence only deepens the enigma, inviting reflection on the impermanence of even the most carefully planned human endeavors. Walking along the embankments and tracing the grid of streets with the imagination, one is struck by both the ingenuity and the elusiveness of the settlement. The stones and streets are tangible, measurable, and meticulously crafted, yet the society that built them is known only through fragments, pottery shards, traces of buildings, and the faint outlines of channels and gates. We can reconstruct the mechanics of the settlement, but the lives, intentions, and beliefs of its inhabitants remain largely hidden. Sisupalgarh, like Beidha before it, challenges our assumptions about the emergence of urban complexity and the knowledge possessed by societies often labeled primitive or proto-historic. As we stand on the plateau overlooking the remnants of Sisupalgarh, questions linger in the silence. What drove this society to create such precise order? What knowledge, technical or conceptual, guided the construction of its walls, streets, and gates? And, most importantly, what remains undiscovered beneath the soil, waiting to illuminate the story further? The settlement endures as both achievement and puzzle, a testament to human ingenuity and an enduring reminder that even the earliest cities were capable of sophistication that still astonishes us today. In Sisupalgarh, as in Beidha and Khirbet Qeiyafa, the past speaks quietly yet insistently. It offers fragments of knowledge, glimpses of order, and traces of human ambition, yet it withholds its full meaning. The stones, streets, and embankments are both evidence and enigma, prompting reflection on the limits of our understanding and inviting us to imagine what insights about human ingenuity, social organization, and early urban life might still lie hidden, waiting for those who approach with patience, curiosity, and an open mind. From the carefully ordered streets of Sisupalgarh, our journey now shifts across continents, across oceans, to the coastal plains of ancient Peru, where one of the earliest monumental complexes of the Americas quietly rises from the arid desert near the modern city of Lima. Here lies El Paraíso, a series of stone and adobe platforms that stretch across a broad valley, their massive rectilinear forms etched against the horizon. The sun glints off the smooth surfaces of the adobe walls, casting sharp shadows into shallow recesses and stairways, highlighting both the scale and the precision of these constructions. Even in their partially eroded state, the platforms command attention, a silent testament to human ambition over 5 millennia ago. El Paraíso is believed to date from roughly 3,500 to 4,500 BCE, placing it among the oldest known monumental complexes in the Americas. Unlike settlements of comparable age elsewhere, the scale of El Paraíso is immediately striking. Low, expansive platforms, many rectangular or trapezoidal, rise from the desert floor, some measuring more than 150 meters in length. They are linked by plazas and open spaces, suggesting coordinated planning and a shared cultural vision. Yet, despite the apparent purposefulness of the layout, the function of these platforms remains enigmatic. Were they centers of ritual, hubs of commerce, or something entirely different, an expression of social cohesion whose meaning is now largely obscured? Archaeologists have noted the careful construction techniques employed at El Paraíso. The platforms are built with alternating layers of stone and adobe, producing walls that are both sturdy and surprisingly resilient to seismic activity. Some structures contain small niches and internal divisions, hinting at specific uses, but none are adorned with sculpture or pictorial reliefs that might clearly signal ritual or ceremonial function. This absence, coupled with the massive scale, poses an enduring question. Why invest such labor and coordination into structures whose precise purpose leaves no obvious record? El Paraíso is also remarkable for what it reveals and conceals about the society that built it. Evidence suggests the inhabitants were engaged in fishing, agriculture, and possibly trade, yet there is little indication of hierarchical rulers or grand palaces within the complex itself. The organization of space hints at communal activity, with large plazas that may have served as gathering points for ritual, governance, or shared labor. The consistency in construction across multiple platforms, however, suggests not only technical skill but a shared knowledge of design principles, a system of planning that must have required leadership, coordination, and foresight. How such a society developed and maintained this level of organization so early in human history remains uncertain. One of the most intriguing aspects of El Paraíso is the absence of a clear chronological narrative. Radiocarbon dating indicates that construction was episodic, with different platforms erected at slightly different times. Yet the overall alignment and spatial relationships between them are remarkably consistent. Was this continuity deliberate, reflecting a long-standing cultural vision, or the result of successive generations adhering to an inherited plan whose original meaning had already begun to fade? And if the latter, what social or spiritual pressures kept these ancient builders so meticulously aligned to a vision we can now barely comprehend? Speculative interpretations naturally arise alongside mainstream archaeology. Some scholars suggest that the platforms served primarily as ceremonial centers, designed for large-scale communal activities that reinforced social cohesion. Others propose that the scale and alignment may encode astronomical knowledge pointing toward solstices or other celestial events, though evidence for such alignments remains debated. Certain researchers have even speculated that El Paraíso was part of a network of early monumental sites along the Peruvian coast, connected by shared ritual practices or cultural symbolism. While these ideas are difficult to verify, the very questions they raise underscore the complexity of early Andean society and the sophistication of human ingenuity in the absence of writing or recorded history. The environmental context adds another layer to the mystery. El Paraíso rises from a coastal desert where fresh water is scarce, yet evidence of early canals, irrigation channels, and terraces suggests that its inhabitants had developed strategies for sustaining both agriculture and settlement. Were these adaptations purely practical, or did they serve ceremonial or symbolic purposes as well? Could the organization of space within the complex reflect a deeper understanding of the relationship between humans, water, and the landscape, an encoded philosophy of sustainability long lost to the desert winds. Even the settlement's apparent simplicity invites reflection. There are no monumental statues, no elaborate tombs, no evidence of writing or iconography. Yet the sheer effort required to construct and maintain these platforms implies an advanced social and organizational system. How did these communities coordinate labor, communicate knowledge, and preserve continuity over centuries? And why did El Paraíso eventually decline, leaving its platforms to be slowly reclaimed by desert sands? These questions linger, as open-ended as the empty plazas themselves. Walking among the platforms today, one feels both scale and intimacy. The enormity of the walls impresses the imagination, yet the human touch, the careful shaping of stones, the leveling of adobe layers, the subtle alignment of structures, speaks to individuals whose decisions and skill have left traces that persist far longer than any written record. In this silence, the mystery of El Paraíso endures. It is a reminder that human societies, even without writing or monumental art, were capable of vision, coordination, and long-term planning. And yet, the deeper meaning, the motivations, rituals, and social dynamics remains just beyond our reach. El Paraíso, like Sisupalgarh, Beidha, and Khirbet Qeiyafa, challenges assumptions about early human achievement. Each stone platform, each adobe wall offers evidence of ingenuity, yet conceals its full story. We are left with fragments, patterns, and possibilities, glimpses of a past that demands both careful study and thoughtful reflection. What knowledge, cultural practice, or spiritual belief motivated the construction of these platforms? What remains buried beneath sand and soil, waiting to reveal new insights into a civilization whose footprint stretches across millennia? In the quiet of the Peruvian desert, as the wind whispers across the broad, flat terraces of El Paraíso, the unanswered questions persist. The site stands as both achievement and enigma, a place where human vision, labor, and social coordination are etched into the landscape, and where the mysteries of purpose, meaning, and lost knowledge continue to invite our curiosity and wonder. From the sun-baked platforms of El Paraíso, our journey traces a path northward along the Americas, into the lush highlands of southern Guatemala, where the dense forests of the Pacific slope conceal one of Mesoamerica's most enigmatic archaeological treasures, Takalik Abaj. Rising amidst mist-laden valleys and terraced hillsides, this site unfolds like a layered manuscript written in stone. Here, broad terraces stretch across the slopes, their flat surfaces carefully leveled and reinforced with retaining walls of volcanic rock. The terraces, some extending for tens of meters, create a rhythm across the hillside, a deliberate manipulation of the natural terrain that suggests both practicality and symbolic intent. Takalik Abaj is remarkable not only for its scale, but for its age. Its earliest constructions date back to roughly 800 BCE, placing it among the oldest known ceremonial centers in Mesoamerica, predating the rise of the classic Maya by centuries. Archaeologists have documented a complex of terraces, plazas, and sculpted monuments, including stelae, altars, and intricately carved heads that together form a mosaic of social, religious, and political life. The site appears to have been continuously occupied for nearly a millennium, reflecting evolving architectural styles and cultural influences. Yet despite centuries of investigation, the full meaning of Takalik Abaj's terraces remains elusive. The terraces themselves immediately capture the imagination. Each level is a feat of engineering, requiring careful leveling, stone reinforcement, and strategic drainage to withstand rainfall in this highland environment. The flat surfaces could have supported buildings, markets, ceremonial structures, or even agricultural cultivation. Yet the absence of definitive building remains on some terraces raises questions. Were these terraces primarily functional, or did they serve ritual or symbolic purposes, creating a stage for human activity elevated above the surrounding forest? And if symbolic, what ideas, beliefs, or cosmological principles were encoded into the careful geometry of these stepped landscapes? Takalik Abaj's sculptural corpus adds to the mystery. Massive stone heads, some nearly 2 meters in height, are scattered across terraces, their features strikingly different from later Maya conventions, yet hinting at emerging cultural motifs. Relief carvings depict deities, mythic scenes, and possibly rulers, yet the interpretations remain debated. Some scholars suggest these monuments reflect Olmec influence, given stylistic similarities, while others argue they represent a distinct Proto-Mesoamerican culture developing independently. The terraces themselves may have been designed to display these carvings in a deliberate sequence, guiding viewers along a spatial narrative that is now partially obscured by time and vegetation. The layout of the terraces raises further questions about societal organization. The construction of massive terraces requires coordinated labor, leadership, and planning, implying a level of social complexity beyond that expected of early highland communities. How did these builders organize their workforce? What administrative or ritual authority guided the shaping of the hillsides? And what messages were intended to emerge from this carefully sculpted landscape, visible to those who approached or occupied it in antiquity? Each terrace is both practical and enigmatic, a platform of possibility and a puzzle left for later generations to decipher. Environmental adaptation is another intriguing aspect. Takalik Abaj occupies a transitional zone between the Pacific lowlands and the Guatemalan highlands, with fertile volcanic soils and a relatively temperate climate. The terraces may have facilitated agriculture, but their integration with monumental spaces suggests a blending of function and symbolism. Could these terraces have simultaneously supported crops and ceremonial activities? Were they designed to manifest a worldview in which human labor reshaped the land itself to reflect cosmic order, a principle seen later in the grand plazas and pyramids of Maya civilization? Speculative interpretations naturally arise from such ambiguity. Some researchers propose that the terraces were designed as a platformed landscape for ritual performance, a stage upon which the society's spiritual and political narratives were enacted. Others suggest they may encode knowledge of astronomy or cosmology, aligning structures with the sun, moon, or key seasonal events. While these theories cannot yet be confirmed, they underscore the sophistication of the builders and the symbolic depth that may have been intended in these vast, carefully leveled spaces. Takalik Abaj also presents mysteries of continuity and transition. Over centuries, terraces were expanded, modified, and repurposed, reflecting cultural evolution and changing social priorities. Yet the reasons for the site's eventual decline remain unclear. Did environmental shifts, social upheaval, or external pressures lead to its abandonment, or were broader regional transformations at play? The terraces remain, silent witnesses to a society whose motivations and decisions are largely unknowable, leaving only the stonework and monuments as tangible traces of a vanished past. Walking along the terraces today, one senses both the human labor embedded in each leveled stone and the quiet persistence of the natural world reclaiming the landscape. The terraces offer a kind of dialogue across time, a conversation between the builders and those who now study their work. Every retaining wall, every carved head, every flat surface speaks of intention, yet resists complete interpretation. What stories were enacted on these terraces? What beliefs, social hierarchies, or cosmological insights were encoded into their very geometry? And what remains hidden beneath centuries of soil, vegetation, and erosion, waiting to reveal new secrets about the people who shaped this hillside? In Takalik Abaj, as in El Paraíso and Sisupalgarh before it, human ingenuity and mystery intertwine. The terraces are a testament to organization, skill, and vision, yet they withhold definitive answers. They invite contemplation, careful observation, and imagination. They remind us that monumental architecture does not always speak in clear narratives, but often leaves traces that hint at knowledge now lost. As we gaze across the terraced slopes, the unanswered questions persist. What principles guided the layout of these terraces? How did the builders balance utility, symbolism, and social cohesion? And, most compellingly, what knowledge or insights did they possess that have vanished with time, leaving only the enduring impression of stone and earth? In the quiet of the Guatemalan highlands, the terraces of Takalik Abaj endure as both achievement and enigma, inviting us to wonder at the sophistication, ambition, and mysteries of the civilizations that came before us. From the terraced highlands of Takalik Abaj, where human hands reshaped slopes into ceremonial landscapes, our journey now turns across continents once more, following the rhythm of civilizations that sought to inscribe permanence into the natural world. On the sun-bleached cliffs of southwestern Turkey, overlooking the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean, the Lycian rock tombs rise silently from rugged mountainsides, carved directly into sheer faces of limestone. Their facades, some ornate, some austere, are perched high above valleys, seemingly defying gravity, as if daring time itself to erase their presence. From a distance, they appear almost sculptural, monuments suspended between earth and sky, enduring witnesses to lives long vanished. The Lycian rock tombs date from roughly the 5th to 4th centuries BCE, a period when the Lycian civilization flourished along the southern coast of Anatolia. Carved into cliff faces, these tombs range from simple chambers to elaborately decorated facades resembling miniature temples. Columns, pediments, and relief carvings evoke architectural conventions of the wider Mediterranean, yet the placement of the tombs, often hundreds of meters above accessible ground, suggests something beyond aesthetic imitation. Why were the dead entombed in such perilous locations? Was it an expression of social hierarchy, a means of safeguarding the deceased, or a symbolic gesture connecting the tombs to the heavens? Archaeologists generally interpret the tombs as funerary monuments for the elite of Lycian society, designed to honor and preserve the memory of important individuals. Inscriptions, when present, identify families or occasionally reference civic achievements, suggesting a desire to immortalize both lineage and accomplishment. Yet even within this mainstream understanding, questions linger. The construction techniques required to carve chambers high on cliff faces, using only rudimentary tools, reveal a level of engineering sophistication that remains impressive even by modern standards. How were these massive stones hewn, lifted, and arranged? What labor, planning, and knowledge of physics were employed to achieve such feats, often in locations that are all but inaccessible? The tomb's vertical placement also invites reflection on the Lycian world view. The dead were not merely buried. They were elevated, set apart from the living, and integrated into the dramatic natural landscape. Was this elevation purely symbolic, representing the soul's ascent or proximity to the divine? Or was it a display of power, a visible claim on the landscape that projected influence even beyond death? Some scholars have noted that certain tombs align with specific vistas, valleys, rivers, or mountain peaks, suggesting an awareness of geography and perhaps even celestial patterns, though interpretations remain speculative. Inside the tombs, chambers are surprisingly spacious, with interiors often proportioned to accommodate ritual activity as well as interment. Some contain carved benches, niches for offerings, or small side chambers whose purpose is still debated. Were these features purely functional, or did they serve as stages for ceremonies honoring the deceased? And why do certain tombs feature elaborate reliefs, while others remain minimal, almost stark in their simplicity. The contrast raises questions about social stratification, cultural values, and the interplay between personal status and communal memory. Beyond the tombs themselves, the Lycian landscape enhances the enigma. The rugged mountains, carved cliffs, and winding valleys create a sense of isolation and permanence. The tombs are visible from below, yet often unreachable without climbing, a tension between visibility and inaccessibility that speaks to deliberate intent. Some researchers have speculated that these tombs were part of a broader network of sacred or commemorative sites, creating a landscape in which the living and the dead coexisted symbolically. Others suggest that the placement may reflect an understanding of defensive or territorial markers, though evidence for such a theory remains circumstantial. The Lycian rock tombs also provoke questions about continuity and influence. The architectural forms echo Hellenistic and earlier Anatolian styles, suggesting cultural exchange, yet they are uniquely Lycian in their verticality and integration into cliffs. What inspired this synthesis? Was it purely aesthetic, or did it reflect deeper philosophical or religious ideas about life, death, and the natural world? And how did the knowledge required to construct these tombs, tools, labor organization, surveying, and design develop and persist within a civilization whose written records are scarce and often fragmentary? Speculative theories naturally emerge alongside mainstream archaeology. Some propose that the tombs were deliberately designed to channel spiritual energy or align with cosmic forces, transforming the mountains themselves into sacred monuments. Others suggest that the vertical construction might symbolize the tension between mortality and transcendence, a physical representation of ascent from the human to the divine. While these ideas cannot be definitively proven, they underscore the psychological and symbolic depth that the tombs may have held for those who built and used them. Walking among the Lycian rock tombs today, one feels a profound sense of awe. The effort required to carve these chambers into sheer cliffs, the precision of their facades, and the care taken in their orientation speak to both human ingenuity and a deeply rooted understanding of landscape, material, and symbolism. Yet despite the centuries of study, much remains unknown. What daily rituals took place within these tombs? How did the living interact with these vertical cemeteries? And what stories, beliefs, or cultural practices have been lost to time, leaving only these silent stone witnesses? In Lycian rock tombs, as in Takalik Abaj, El Paraíso, and Sisupalgarh before them, the interplay between human ambition, environmental adaptation, and symbolic intent is palpable. The tombs remind us that monumental construction is rarely purely functional. They were not merely places to bury the dead. They were statements of identity, power, and perhaps even cosmology. And yet, their full significance eludes us, as does the knowledge, ritual, and intention embedded within the cliffs. From the heights of the Lycian mountains, the tombs gaze down across valleys that have shifted over millennia, inviting us to wonder at the civilization that elevated its dead into the sky. What guided the hands and minds of those who carved these chambers? What wisdom or cultural understanding has vanished with the passing centuries, leaving behind only stone, shadow, and unanswered questions? The mystery endures, compelling us to study, reflect, and imagine as the Lycian rock tombs silently guard their ancient secrets. From the cliffs of Lycia, where human hands carved eternity into limestone, our exploration turns once more to South America, to the misty valleys of Peru's northern highlands, where the remnants of Tello quietly testify to human ingenuity and an enduring enigma. Nestled on terraced hillsides overlooking fertile river plains, Tello is defined by broad stone platforms and carefully leveled terraces, their precise edges cutting across the natural slopes in patterns that suggest both intention and sophistication. The terraces, though weathered by centuries of wind and rain, retain an unmistakable geometry, hinting at a society deeply engaged with both the land and the knowledge of construction. The Tello terraces are remarkable for their scale and antiquity. Scholars date their initial construction to around 2500 BCE, placing them among the earliest known monumental constructions in this part of the Andes. Unlike the ceremonial complexes of El Paraíso or the terraced hills of Takalik Abaj, the terraces of Tello appear to combine functionality with monumental design, agricultural potential, architectural endurance, and perhaps ritual significance all seem intertwined. Yet despite extensive study, their full purpose remains a matter of debate. Were they primarily practical, designed to maximize arable land and control water flow? Or did they serve a symbolic function, reflecting cosmology, social hierarchy, or spiritual beliefs of a society now lost to history? The construction techniques themselves raise compelling questions. The terraces are reinforced with carefully placed stone retaining walls, some of them massive, holding earth in tiered layers that have resisted the erosive forces of centuries. Such precision suggests knowledge of weight distribution, drainage, and structural stability that exceeds what might be expected from a society with no written record of engineering principles. How did the builders conceive these terraces? How was labor organized, stones quarried, and earth leveled with such consistency? And what inspired these early architects to impose such order upon the natural landscape? The terraces also invite speculation about environmental adaptation. Tello sits in a region of seasonal rainfall, where controlling water flow and preventing soil erosion would have been crucial. The terraces may have functioned as an ingenious system of micro-agriculture, transforming steep slopes into productive land. Yet their precise dimensions, the repetition of patterns across multiple hillsides, and the scale of labor required suggest that utility alone may not explain their existence. Could these terraces simultaneously have served ritual or ceremonial purposes, creating spaces for communal gatherings, offerings, or observation of seasonal cycles? Archaeologists have noted that the terraces are often aligned with other landscape features, nearby rivers, prominent mountain peaks, and even the rising sun on certain days of the year. While mainstream interpretations remain cautious, these alignments hint at an awareness of astronomy and spatial orientation that may have been intentionally encoded into the design. Was the landscape itself considered sacred, a canvas upon which the society expressed cosmological understanding? Or were these alignments primarily practical, designed to optimize agricultural planning? The answers remain elusive, leaving the terraces suspended in a space between functionality and mystery. Tello's terraces also speak to social organization. Coordinating construction on this scale would have required leadership, planning, and a cohesive workforce. The terraces' uniformity and precision suggest standards or traditions passed through generations, reflecting not only technical skill but cultural continuity. Yet, unlike later monumental centers, Tello lacks evidence of palatial or heavily ceremonial architecture, leaving us to ponder how social authority, ritual practice, and communal labor intersected in these early Andean societies. How did early planners balance the practical needs of agriculture with the symbolic or social imperatives of monumental construction? Speculative interpretations naturally emerge alongside conventional explanations. Some researchers propose that the terraces may have functioned as a template for early sacred landscapes, spaces where human intervention mirrored celestial or terrestrial order. Others suggest that Tello represents an early experiment in hydraulic engineering, encoding knowledge of water management and soil conservation that was sophisticated for its time. While such theories cannot yet be definitively proven, they underscore the depth of ingenuity and perhaps even ritual consciousness that shaped the terraces. Walking along the terraces today, one is struck by their scale and subtlety. From the vantage point of a nearby hillside, the terraces form a rhythmic pattern across the slopes, almost like a silent amphitheater, carved not of wood or adobe, but of enduring stone. Each terrace, each retaining wall, is both functional and monumental, a testament to human patience, skill, and foresight. Yet the human stories that created them remain largely invisible. The laborers who leveled soil, the planners who envisioned the layout, and the society that coordinated effort over decades are all reduced to patterns in stone. Tello, like the Lycian rock tombs, Takalik Abaj, and El Paraíso before it, reminds us that monumental construction is rarely purely functional. It is often a convergence of skill, vision, and cultural meaning. The terraces provoke reflection not only on what societies achieved, but also on what knowledge, beliefs, and practices may have been lost to time. What guided the hands of these early builders? What principles, spiritual or practical, informed their decisions? And how much of this knowledge is now hidden beneath centuries of soil, vegetation, and erosion? As we look across the terraces of Tello, the unanswered questions persist, echoing the mysteries we have encountered in other corners of the ancient world. These terraces endure as both achievement and puzzle, enduring evidence of human ingenuity, yet withholding their full story. They challenge us to consider not only the practical but also the symbolic, the visible, and the hidden, leaving us to wonder what remains undiscovered, waiting to illuminate the civilizations that shaped this remarkable landscape. From the sculpted slopes of Tello, where early Andean builders shaped stone terraces with precision and foresight, our exploration now returns to the ancient highlands of Mesopotamia, to the foothills of northern Iraq, where a subtler yet no less compelling form of early human engineering quietly endures. The Zawi Chemi terraces. Nestled along the banks of tributaries feeding into the Tigris, these terraces are low, earth and stone constructions, meticulously leveled into natural slopes, forming platforms that stretch across hillsides in a rhythm both practical and deliberate. In the soft light of morning, the terraces catch shadows that trace the contours of centuries, revealing patterns that hint at intent, knowledge, and perhaps ritual significance. Zawi Chemi is among the earliest known sites of the Ubaid period, roughly 5,500 to 4,000 BCE, a time when the first complex settlements began emerging across Mesopotamia. The terraces themselves are modest compared to the monumental constructions of the Andes or Mesoamerica, yet they reflect an equally remarkable understanding of landscape management. Archaeologists have documented flat platforms, retaining features, and subtle embankments, suggesting that early communities shaped their environment not only for practical purposes, such as agriculture, settlement, or water control, but also in ways that express a deliberate spatial order. The terraces are as much a statement of human engagement with the land as they are functional tools. Mainstream scholarship often interprets Zawi Chemi terraces as an early form of proto-agriculture, intended to maximize arable land in hilly terrain and to control irrigation in a region prone to seasonal fluctuations. Excavations reveal evidence of planting surfaces, small drainage channels, and the strategic positioning of terraces to reduce erosion. Yet even with these practical considerations, the design evokes questions. Why invest such labor into terraces that require long-term maintenance, particularly in a landscape already favorable to riverine cultivation? Were these terraces purely utilitarian, or did they serve as early markers of social organization, status, or ritual practice? The terrace's subtlety adds to their intrigue. Unlike the monumental platforms of Tello or the elevated terraces of Takalik Abaj, Zawi Chemi's constructions blend almost seamlessly into the natural slopes. From afar, they appear organic, part of the land itself, yet closer examination reveals deliberate leveling, stone reinforcement, and consistent proportions across multiple terraces. The builders were working with precision, yet without the overt grandeur seen in other contemporary structures. What motivated this restraint? Could the terrace's understated elegance reflect a cultural philosophy, a worldview in which human modification of the landscape was harmonious rather than domineering? Or were these terraces simply pragmatic, their form dictated by necessity rather than ideology? The terraces also invite reflection on social organization and labor. Constructing even modest terraces requires planning, coordination, and shared effort. The Ubaid communities who shaped Zawi Chemi would have needed not only technical knowledge, but also social structures capable of organizing sustained labor. What sort of leadership, planning, or ritual oversight guided these early engineers? And how was knowledge of construction passed across generations in a society with no written language? The terraces silently testify to human ingenuity, yet the minds and decisions behind them remain largely invisible, preserved only in the earth and stone they molded. Speculative interpretations emerge naturally in the absence of definitive evidence. Some researchers propose that the terraces may have had ceremonial or symbolic significance, perhaps serving as elevated platforms for communal gatherings, rituals, or observation of seasonal events. Others suggest that the linear and repetitive forms may encode knowledge of early hydraulic or agricultural systems, a primitive but sophisticated method of environmental management. While these hypotheses cannot be confirmed with certainty, they highlight the terrace's dual nature, functional yet potentially symbolic, a space where utility and meaning coexist. The environmental context deepens the mystery. Zawi Chemi sits within a semi-arid zone, where careful management of water and soil would have been crucial to survival. The terraces may have served as microclimatic modifications, controlling runoff and soil retention to create more productive land. Yet their careful geometric patterns, repeated across hillsides, suggest more than mere necessity. Was the shaping of land itself a form of early expression, a way of demonstrating human order imposed on nature, or even a symbolic reflection of cosmological or spiritual ideas now lost? Walking along the terraces today, one is struck by both their subtlety and endurance. Each platform, each embankment, preserves traces of deliberate action, the mark of human hands shaping the landscape with care and purpose. The terraces invite contemplation not only of how ancient communities adapted to their environment, but also of the thought processes, cultural beliefs, and social coordination required to accomplish such feats. How much knowledge about construction, water management, or communal organization has been lost to time? And what insights might still lie buried beneath the terraces, waiting for patient investigation to reveal them? Zawi Chemi, like Tello, Lycian rock tombs, and Takalik Abaj before it, demonstrates that even modest constructions can embody extraordinary knowledge and intent. They challenge assumptions about the relationship between scale and significance, reminding us that monumental achievement is not always measured in size alone. These terraces endure as both evidence and enigma, functional artifacts shaped by necessity and vision, yet imbued with meaning we can only partially comprehend. As the sun sets over the rolling hills, casting long shadows across the terraces of Zawi Chemi, one senses the continuity of human curiosity and ingenuity. These low-leveled platforms are silent witnesses to early societies negotiating the complexities of environment, labor, and social cohesion. And yet, despite centuries of observation and research, fundamental questions remain. What guided the design of these terraces? What rituals, beliefs, or practical knowledge shaped them? And how much remains hidden, awaiting discovery, beneath the soil of this ancient landscape? In Zawi Chemi, as in the other extraordinary sites we have explored, from Tello and El Paraíso to Takalik Abaj and the Lycian cliffs, the past speaks quietly, persistently, and ambiguously. The terraces remind us that human ingenuity is universal, often sophisticated, and frequently enigmatic. They invite reflection, curiosity, and wonder, leaving us to imagine the knowledge, intention, and lives that once shaped these stones and the land they now inhabit. From the gently leveled terraces of Zawi Chemi, where early Mesopotamian communities shaped hillsides into ordered platforms of labor and intention, our journey now arcs westward, across the Mediterranean, to the island of Sardinia. Here, amidst rolling plains and low hills, rises one of Europe's most enigmatic prehistoric monuments, Monte de Codi. Unlike the subtle terraces of Mesopotamia or the sprawling platforms of the Andes, Monte de Codi commands the landscape with a singular, unmistakable silhouette. A massive, stepped platform, square at its base and tapering toward a flat summit, like a stone ziggurat transplanted unexpectedly into the western Mediterranean. From afar, it appears almost otherworldly, a geometric anomaly standing in quiet defiance of surrounding nature. Monte de Codi is believed to date from around 4000 to 3500 BCE, placing it among the earliest known monumental constructions in Europe. The complex consists of a massive trapezoidal platform constructed from large blocks of basalt and limestone, accessed by a broad ramp on one side. At the summit, archaeological evidence suggests a ceremonial or religious structure once stood, though the precise form remains unknown. The combination of scale, geometry, and elevation indicates both intentionality and sophistication. But why build such a structure in this particular landscape? And for what purpose did the ancient Sardinians invest such effort into a monument whose form is unparalleled in the region? Mainstream interpretations generally classify Monte de Codi as a ceremonial or cultic site, perhaps serving as a focal point for community gatherings, offerings, or religious rituals. Excavations have uncovered pottery fragments, obsidian tools, and evidence of fire, suggesting repeated ceremonial activity. Yet the monument's form, stepped, monumental, and nearly rectangular, differs radically from contemporaneous Neolithic structures elsewhere in Europe, raising questions about inspiration and cultural context. Was this a local innovation, or did it draw upon architectural ideas that reached Sardinia through long-distance contact, now lost to history? The construction of Monte de Codi itself speaks to extraordinary planning and labor coordination. Large stones were quarried, transported, and set into place with remarkable precision. The ramp leading to the summit implies a deliberate sequence of movement, possibly guiding participants toward the ceremonial apex. Could this be an early expression of processional architecture, where movement through space was as important as the destination itself? And what social structures enabled the coordination, knowledge, and labor required for such an undertaking in a society with no known writing system or formal urban hierarchy? One of the most striking aspects of Monte de Codi is its elevation. Unlike the Lycian tombs, which cling to cliffs for visibility and symbolic ascension, or the terraces of Tello and Zawi Chemi, which are integrated into the landscape for practical purposes, Monte de Codi seems deliberately isolated and elevated. The summit platform, flat and accessible only by a single ramp, creates a sense of ritual focus, a stage separated from ordinary life. Was this elevation symbolic, intended to bridge the human and divine, or was it functional, providing a vantage point over the surrounding plains for ceremonial observation? Could it have also served as a territorial marker, visible across kilometers, asserting a claim to the surrounding land or water sources? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest that Monte de Codi's geometry mirrors Mesopotamian ziggurats, though the evidence for direct cultural connection is thin. Others propose astronomical alignments, with the ramp and summit oriented toward solstices or lunar events, suggesting an awareness of celestial cycles. While such hypotheses cannot be conclusively verified, they highlight the possibility that this structure was as much an expression of cosmological understanding as it was a communal or ceremonial space. Could Monte encode knowledge, belief, or ritual practice now lost to the millennia? Archaeologists have also noted the broader context of the site. Surrounding Monte are traces of habitation, cemeteries, and smaller ceremonial structures, hinting at a complex society capable of sustained labor and cultural continuity. Yet, for all the visible evidence, the motivations behind the monument remain obscure. Why did these early Sardinians choose to erect such a singular platform, diverging so dramatically from the domestic and funerary architecture of their contemporaries? What beliefs, social hierarchies, or cosmological principles informed the design and construction of this extraordinary edifice? Walking along the base and ramp of Monte today, one senses both human determination and mystery. The stones are tangible, measurable, and enduring, yet the minds that envisioned this monumental platform are silent. The structure invites reflection on early European Neolithic societies, their ingenuity, their capacity for organization, and their desire to shape space in ways that communicated meaning, authority, or spiritual insight. How much knowledge was encoded into the very geometry of the site, and how much has been lost to time? Monte like the Zawi Chemi Terraces, Tello, El Paraíso, and Takalik Abaj before it, illustrates a recurring theme in human history. The impulse to transform the landscape, to build structures that endure, and to embed intention, knowledge, and symbolism into stone. It challenges assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric communities and raises profound questions about the interplay between functionality, ritual, and cosmology. As the sun casts long shadows across its stepped platform, Monte remains both monumental achievement and enigma. Its terraces and ramps invite exploration, reflection, and imagination, yet they withhold their full story. What rituals once echoed across the summit? What knowledge of geometry, astronomy, or social organization guided its construction? And most compellingly, what other secrets might still lie buried beneath the stones, waiting to illuminate the minds of those who built this extraordinary Neolithic complex? In Monte as in the other ancient sites we have traversed, we find the enduring human desire to leave a mark, an imprint of thought, belief, and labor, etched into the very landscape. The answers remain just out of reach, yet the questions themselves invite curiosity, wonder, and a deeper contemplation of the civilizations that shaped the ancient world in ways we are only beginning to understand. From the ancient walls of Jericho, where the earliest urban planners shaped stone into fortifications that have endured over 10 millennia, our exploration now turns to the verdant plains and gently rolling hills of southern Burkina Faso, West Africa. Here lies Loropeni, an archaeological site defined by expansive stone platforms and megalithic walls, partially reclaimed by the tropical landscape. The platforms, built of carefully stacked stones without mortar, stretch across the terrain in subtle, deliberate arrangements. Their low, broad forms seem almost modest at first glance, yet closer inspection reveals precise leveling, repeated patterns, and a scale that hints at both practical function and ceremonial significance. Loropeni is believed to date back to at least 1000 CE, making it one of the oldest known stone settlements in West Africa. Local oral traditions credit the construction to early Senufo, or Gur-speaking communities, yet the lack of written records leaves many questions unanswered. The platforms are interspersed with stone walls, terraces, and enclosures, suggesting a settlement organized around communal spaces, ritual activity, and possibly defensive needs. Unlike monumental structures in other parts of the world, Loropeni conveys subtlety rather than spectacle, a quiet integration of human intent into the natural landscape. Yet the effort required to build these platforms, quarried stones lifted, arranged, and leveled over expansive areas, indicates a sophisticated understanding of construction, spatial organization, and social coordination. Archaeologists interpret the stone platforms as serving multiple purposes. Some may have supported dwellings or public buildings. Others may have functioned as foundations for communal gatherings, while the surrounding walls could delineate sacred, political, or defensive areas. Yet no inscriptions, monumental sculptures, or pictorial records exist to clarify their exact function. Could these platforms have been both utilitarian and symbolic, reflecting social hierarchies, spiritual beliefs, or collective memory? The ambiguity invites reflection. What motivated these communities to invest such labor into structures whose meaning we can now only speculate upon? The site's layout also sparks curiosity. The platforms are arranged in clusters, connected by narrow pathways and enclosed by low walls that hint at intentional spatial organization. Some platforms are oriented toward nearby hills or water sources, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of geography and environmental context. Was the orientation purely practical, designed to manage runoff, wind, and sunlight, or did it carry symbolic meaning, reflecting the community's cosmology or spiritual practices? And how did the builders conceptualize these relationships between stone, land, and sky in a society without written language? Construction techniques reveal both ingenuity and knowledge. The stones used for the platforms vary in size but are remarkably well fitted, demonstrating careful selection and placement. Some walls reach heights of several meters, their stability maintained without mortar, a testament to the builder's skill. Coordinating labor to quarry, transport, and assemble these stones would have required social organization, planning, and perhaps ritual oversight. Who directed this labor? How was technical knowledge transmitted from generation to generation? The answers are obscured by time, leaving only the enduring stonework as evidence of human ambition and expertise. Speculative interpretations naturally emerge from this ambiguity. Some scholars suggest the platforms may have been ceremonial in nature, spaces for public gatherings, ritual observances, or community rites. Others propose they may have functioned as administrative or defensive centers, marking territorial control or consolidating social cohesion. Could they have also been designed to express cosmological or spiritual principles, translating human understanding of the natural and celestial world into stone? While these ideas cannot be definitively proven, they underscore the sophistication and intentionality embedded in Loropeni's architecture. The environmental context adds another layer to the mystery. Southern Burkina Faso is a region of seasonal rainfall, rivers, and fertile soils, yet the labor investment for stone construction far exceeds what would be required for simple agricultural terraces. The platforms, rising from the land yet blending with it, suggest that functionality alone may not explain the monumental effort. Was the act of construction itself part of a ritual or social process, a means of reinforcing communal identity and cohesion? Did the alignment of platforms, pathways, and walls reflect an early understanding of spatial relationships with spiritual or cosmological significance? Walking through Loropeni today, one is struck by the subtlety and endurance of its stone platforms. The surfaces, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, still bear the imprint of careful human design. Each wall, each leveled platform, speaks of intention, labor, and vision, yet the people who built them remain largely invisible, leaving us only the architecture as a testament to their lives and culture. How did these communities conceptualize space, society, and spirituality? And how much knowledge about construction, planning, or ritual practice has been lost to time? Loropeni, like Jericho, Monte Dakoti, Zawi Chemi, and Tello before it, demonstrates that human societies across continents have repeatedly sought to shape the landscape, to create enduring markers of labor, organization, and belief. The platforms are at once functional and enigmatic, bridging practical necessity with symbolic meaning. They invite contemplation of human ingenuity, social coordination, and the intangible dimensions of culture that cannot be measured in stone alone. As the sun sets over the plains of Burkina Faso, casting long shadows across the low stone terraces, Loropeni stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges assumptions about the scale, sophistication, and intent of early African settlements, while reminding us that monumental construction is not always about grandeur. It is often about embedding knowledge, belief, and identity into the land itself. What guided the design of these platforms? What rituals, social systems, or spiritual beliefs inspired their creation? And what secrets, buried beneath soil and centuries, still await discovery to illuminate the lives of the people who built them? In Loropeni, as in the other ancient sites we have visited, the past whispers through stone. It is a reminder that human ingenuity is universal, persistent, and often enigmatic, leaving behind traces that are both evidence and question, inviting us to study, reflect, and wonder at civilizations whose knowledge and intentions continue to challenge our understanding. From the stone platforms of Loropeni, where early West African communities shaped the land into enduring terraces of labor and subtle social expression, our journey now sweeps across the Atlantic to the lowland jungles of southern Mexico. Hidden among the dense vegetation of Tabasco, near the ancient waters of the Usumacinta River, lies Aguada, Fénix, a site whose monumental earthworks quietly challenge our understanding of early Mesoamerican civilization. Stretching across nearly a mile of lowland terrain, the platforms of Aguada Fénix rise subtly above the forest floor. Broad, flat, and remarkably level. Yet their scale becomes apparent only when viewed in full, revealing the handiwork of thousands of hands working in coordination over decades, if not centuries. Aguada Fénix is estimated to date from around 1000 BCE, placing it at the very beginnings of Olmec influence, yet its design and scale suggest a form of monumentalism that does not fully conform to later Mesoamerican urban models. The site consists of multiple raised platforms connected by causeways, with elevated areas that may have supported buildings, ceremonial spaces, or communal gathering points. Unlike the vertical architecture of Monte or the cliffside tombs of Lycia, Aguada Fénix achieves its monumentality through subtlety. Expansive horizontal surfaces leveled with precision, forming a geometric statement upon the earth itself. How did these early builders conceive such a vast and cohesive plan? And what purposes, social, spiritual, or political, drove the creation of such an extensive earthwork? Archaeological research suggests that Aguada Fénix represents one of the earliest known examples of large-scale communal construction in Mesoamerica. The leveled platforms were created by moving and compacting millions of cubic meters of earth, a feat requiring knowledge of geometry, measurement, and labor organization. Yet no evidence has been found of stone foundations, monumental buildings, or sophisticated water management systems comparable to later sites. Could this indicate a society focused less on permanent elite structures and more on communal space and shared ritual practice? If so, what does that tell us about the social and political organization of these early communities? The layout of the site is striking in its simplicity and uniformity. Long rectangular platforms are interconnected by causeways, forming a grid-like pattern that subtly defines communal zones. Some platforms feature low mounds at their centers, which may have served as stages for ceremonial activity or markers of social significance. Their precise leveling, extending across vast distances, implies not only labor coordination, but also careful planning, surveying, and perhaps an early form of urban or landscape design. Could these platforms have been used to orchestrate large gatherings, ritual events, or seasonal observances, bringing together dispersed communities in a unified social and spiritual framework? Speculative interpretations naturally arise when examining Aguada Fénix. Some researchers propose that the platforms may encode cosmological or astronomical knowledge, aligning with seasonal events or solar cycles, a theory that echoes patterns seen at later Olmec and Maya ceremonial centers. Others suggest that the scale and uniformity of the earthworks reflect a form of social cohesion previously unrecognized in pre-classic Mesoamerican societies, a society capable of mobilizing and sustaining labor without the hierarchical urban structures typically associated with monumental construction. Could the builders have envisioned the landscape itself as a medium of social and spiritual expression, creating a platformed canvas for collective identity and ritual practice? Environmental considerations add further layers of mystery. The lowland terrain of Tabasco is prone to seasonal flooding, yet the platforms rise subtly above the natural floodplain. Were the raised surfaces primarily functional, intended to protect dwellings, ceremonial spaces, or crops from seasonal inundation? Or did their geometric precision suggest a symbolic or ritual purpose, a deliberate act of shaping the earth to reflect social order and cosmological understanding? The terraces themselves, flat and expansive, invite contemplation not only of technical achievement but of the worldview that guided such construction. Walking across Aguada, Fénix today, one is struck by the interplay of scale and subtlety. From a distance, the platforms seem modest, almost imperceptible, yet once seen in their entirety, their grandeur becomes undeniable. Each leveled mound, each connecting causeway, is evidence of collective effort and vision, yet the people who built them remain largely invisible, leaving only the earth itself as a record. How did these communities coordinate such labor? What beliefs, social norms, or ritual imperatives inspired the shaping of the land? And how much of their cultural knowledge has been lost beneath centuries of vegetation and sediment, leaving only this monumental footprint as testimony? Aguada, Fénix, like Loropeni, Jericho, Monte and Tello before it, illustrates a recurring theme in human history: the impulse to shape the landscape, to assert presence, identity, and shared purpose, and to encode intention into monumental forms that endure across millennia. These earthworks challenge assumptions about early societal complexity, demonstrating that monumentalism does not always require stone, masonry, or verticality. Sometimes it lies in precision, scale, and communal vision expressed horizontally across the land. As the sun filters through the canopy, casting dappled shadows across the platforms, Aguada Fénix stands as both achievement and enigma. It provokes reflection on the organization, ingenuity, and spiritual imagination of pre-classic Mesoamerican societies. And yet, despite careful study, fundamental questions remain. Why were these massive platforms constructed in this precise arrangement? How did the builders conceive the scale and layout without formal measurement tools? And what cultural or ritual knowledge has vanished, leaving only these silent platforms as the record of a society capable of transforming the earth itself? In Aguada Fénix, as with the other ancient sites we have visited, from Loropeni and Jericho to Monte and Zawi Chemi, the past communicates in fragments, inviting curiosity and reflection. It reminds us that monumental construction is not merely about permanence or display, but about intention, coordination, and the human desire to leave a lasting mark upon the world. Here, in these subtle yet vast platforms, the mystery persists, challenging us to imagine the lives, knowledge, and vision of the people who first shaped this remarkable landscape. From the expansive earthen platforms of Aguada Fénix, where early Mesoamerican societies molded the lowland jungle into monumental expressions of collective vision, our journey now turns westward to the Iranian plateau, to the ancient site of Tepe Sialk. Rising from the dry, rolling plains near modern-day Kashan, Tepe Sialk is among the oldest known settlements in the region, with evidence of continuous occupation stretching back over 7,000 years. At the heart of the site lies a massive, partially excavated mound. an imposing megastructure of mud brick and stone that dominates the surrounding terrain, signaling the ambitions and capabilities of a civilization at the dawn of urban life. The core of Tepe Sialk consists of large concentric mud brick walls, layered terraces, and elevated platforms, suggesting a complex architectural plan developed over centuries. Some sections of the mound reach heights exceeding 20 meters, a remarkable feat considering the technological limitations of the period. Scholars generally interpret the site as a proto-urban center, possibly serving administrative, ceremonial, or defensive purposes, yet its precise function remains elusive. What motivated the builders to invest such extraordinary effort into this mound? Was it primarily for defense, as some suggest, or did it serve as a stage for rituals, a demonstration of power, or even a physical representation of cosmological beliefs? Excavations at Tepe Sialk have revealed evidence of early metallurgical activity, pottery kilns, and residential areas surrounding the central mound, highlighting a society capable of sustained technical innovation. Yet the megastructure itself is distinct in its scale, geometry, and apparent purpose. The concentric walls form terraces and platforms whose construction would have required careful planning, measurement, and coordination. How did a Neolithic community, lacking written records and complex tools, conceptualize and execute such a feat? And what social structures allowed for the sustained labor and knowledge transfer needed to maintain and expand the mound over generations? The design of Tepe Sialk is both practical and enigmatic. The terraces and walls suggest an understanding of weight distribution, structural stability, and spatial organization that is remarkable for such an early society. Some researchers propose that the mound may have been a proto-ziggurat, echoing architectural forms that would later emerge more fully in Mesopotamia, yet its exact relationship to these broader developments remains unclear. Did Tepe Sialk inspire other regional architectural innovations, or was it an independent manifestation of early human ambition arising from local needs, beliefs, and environmental challenges? Speculative interpretations of the site naturally arise. The monumental nature of the mound invites questions about ritual and social symbolism. Was the central platform intended for religious observances, communal gatherings, or as a space to assert social hierarchy? Could the concentric design reflect a cosmological model, an early understanding of the relationship between earth and sky, or the organization of society itself? While definitive evidence is scarce, the sheer scale and intentionality of construction suggests that the megastructure held profound meaning for the people who built it. The surrounding landscape adds to the intrigue. Tepe Sialk is positioned on a low plateau overlooking fertile plains, with access to water sources and arable land. Its visibility would have made it a landmark, perhaps reinforcing territorial claims or signaling social authority. Yet the mound's monumental character seems to surpass purely utilitarian needs. How much of its form was dictated by practical concerns, and how much by symbolic or ritual imperatives? Could the builders have conceived of their architecture as a bridge between the human and divine, the social and the cosmic? Archaeologists have also noted the stratigraphy of the mound, which reveals layers of rebuilding and expansion over centuries. This suggests a continuous investment in both material and cultural knowledge, a society that transmitted construction techniques, urban planning concepts, and possibly ritual practices across generations. How much of this knowledge has been lost to time, leaving only the mud brick terraces and massive walls as clues? And what other insights into social organization, technological capability, or cosmology might still lie hidden beneath the surface? Walking along the partially excavated terraces today, the scale and precision of Tepe Sialk remain breathtaking. Each layer of mud brick, each carefully aligned wall, speaks to deliberate planning, technical skill, and collective human effort. Yet the people themselves, their beliefs, and their social systems remain largely invisible. How did they perceive their environment, their society, and their place in the cosmos? What rituals or administrative practices guided the construction of such an imposing mound? And, most compellingly, what has been lost to time, leaving us with only stone, earth, and shadow as witnesses to an ancient civilization? Tepe Sialk, like Aguada, Fénix, Loropeni, Jericho, and Monte before it, demonstrates a universal human impulse to shape the landscape, to create enduring forms that embody social, technical, and symbolic knowledge. Its terraces and walls are both functional and enigmatic, revealing extraordinary ingenuity while preserving profound mysteries. The megastructure reminds us that monumental construction is rarely a matter of mere practicality. It is a physical manifestation of human ambition, organization, and imagination. As the sunlight shifts across the plateau, casting shadows over the terraces and walls of Tepe Sialk, the site remains a silent witness to the capabilities and aspirations of its builders. It challenges assumptions about early urbanism, monumental architecture, and the sophistication of Neolithic societies. And yet, despite decades of research, fundamental questions endure. Why was this particular site chosen for such an ambitious structure? What knowledge and beliefs guided the construction process? And what secrets remain buried beneath layers of earth, waiting to reveal the lives, visions, and innovations of a civilization that shaped stone and soil into enduring mystery? In Tepe Sialk, as in the other ancient sites we have explored, from Aguada, Fénix, and Loropeni to Jericho and Monte the past communicates in fragments through stone, mud brick, and earth. It invites reflection, curiosity, and wonder, challenging us to imagine civilizations whose knowledge, ambition, and ritual imagination endure in monumental forms, even when the people themselves have long vanished. Walking along the partially excavated terraces today, the scale and precision of Tepe Sialk remain breathtaking. Each layer of mud brick, each carefully aligned wall, speaks to deliberate planning, technical skill, and collective human effort. Yet the people themselves, their beliefs, and their social systems remain largely invisible. How did they perceive their environment, their society, and their place in the cosmos? What rituals or administrative practices guided the construction of such an imposing mound? And, most compellingly, what has been lost to time, leaving us with only stone, earth, and shadow as witnesses to an ancient civilization? Tepe Sialk, like Aguada, Fénix, Loropeni, Jericho, and Monte before it, demonstrates a universal human impulse to shape the landscape, to create enduring forms that embody social, technical, and symbolic knowledge. Its terraces and walls are both functional and enigmatic, revealing extraordinary ingenuity while preserving profound mysteries. The megastructure reminds us that monumental construction is rarely a matter of mere practicality. It is a physical manifestation of human ambition, organization, and imagination. As the sunlight shifts across the plateau, casting shadows over the terraces and walls of Tepe Sialk, the site remains a silent witness to the capabilities and aspirations of its builders. It challenges assumptions about early urbanism, monumental architecture, and the sophistication of Neolithic societies. And yet, despite decades of research, fundamental questions endure. Why was this particular site chosen for such an ambitious structure? What knowledge and beliefs guided the construction process? And what secrets remain buried beneath layers of earth, waiting to reveal the lives, visions, and innovations of a civilization that shaped stone and soil into enduring mystery? In Tepe Sialk, as in the other ancient sites we have explored, from Aguada, Fénix, and Loropeni to Jericho and Monte the past communicates in fragments through stone, mud brick, and earth. It invites reflection, curiosity, and wonder, challenging us to imagine civilizations whose knowledge, ambition, and ritual imagination endure in monumental forms, even when the people themselves have long vanished. From the monumental terraces of Tepe Sialk, where early Iranian communities shaped mud and stone into a megastructure of labor, ritual, and social organization, our exploration now moves to the windswept northern reaches of Europe, to the Orkney Islands of Scotland. Here, amidst low rolling hills and the chill breath of the North Atlantic, lies Skara Brae, a settlement so perfectly preserved that it offers a rare and intimate window into the lives of people who lived more than 5,000 years ago. Unlike towering ziggurats or sprawling platforms, Skara Brae is horizontal, compact, and organic, a cluster of stone houses interconnected by narrow passageways, partially buried beneath earth and turf, as if the settlement itself had folded into the landscape to withstand time and storm. Skara Brae dates to roughly 3,200 to 2,500 BCE during the European Neolithic, making it contemporaneous with early developments in the Middle East, Africa, and Mesoamerica. Yet its preservation, achieved by natural burial under sand dunes for centuries, gives the site a clarity that few others can match. Walking through its core, one sees stone-built furniture, beds, dressers, hearths, integrated seamlessly into the walls of each dwelling. The layout is remarkably sophisticated. Homes are connected by covered passageways, suggesting careful planning, while shared courtyards and communal areas hint at a society that valued both privacy and cooperation. How did these early Orkney Islanders conceive and execute such a settlement with such durable precision? The houses themselves are an architectural marvel. Built from locally quarried stone, each dwelling was partially sunk into the ground to provide insulation and protection from the harsh North Atlantic winds. Stone slabs form walls, furniture, and storage areas in a single integrated design, creating homes that are functional, enduring, and aesthetically coherent. The precision with which the builders fitted slabs together, creating flat surfaces and right angles without mortar, reveals not only technical skill, but also an intimate knowledge of stone properties, spatial planning, and domestic ergonomics. How much knowledge of geometry, labor organization, and craft was required to achieve this harmony, and how was it transmitted in a society without writing? Mainstream scholarship interprets Skara Brae as a permanent farming community, sustained by sheep, cattle, and cereal cultivation, alongside fishing and shellfish gathering. Yet the sophistication of its dwellings suggests more than simple subsistence. The stone beds, dressers, and built-in storage imply an advanced understanding of domestic efficiency and social organization. Could these homes also reflect a cultural or symbolic logic, an attempt to harmonize human life with the landscape, the seasons, and the communal needs of the settlement? And what social or ritual practices might have governed daily life, shaping interactions within and between households? The settlement's coastal location adds layers of intrigue. Skara Brae was originally built on a sand dune overlooking sheltered lagoons, providing access to both marine and terrestrial resources. But as centuries passed, the settlement was gradually buried by shifting sands, preserving it almost in perfect condition. Was this burial entirely accidental? Or could early inhabitants have had some understanding of landscape dynamics, choosing specific locations with awareness of natural forces? And how did they respond to environmental change over time, adapting architecture and social practices to survive in a challenging climate? Speculative interpretations emerge when considering the settlement's design. The integration of furniture into walls, the careful layout of passageways, and the spatial separation of living and working areas suggest a highly organized society with knowledge of domestic ergonomics and communal planning. Some researchers propose that certain alignments within the settlement may have had astronomical significance, echoing patterns observed at other Neolithic sites across Europe. Could Skara Brae's orientation, layout, or construction reflect early knowledge of celestial cycles, or was its genius purely practical, a product of necessity and local adaptation? Archaeological evidence reveals repeated episodes of repair and reuse, suggesting continuity of habitation and knowledge transmission over generations. Yet the community eventually abandoned the site, leaving behind homes fully furnished but buried under sand, preserving a snapshot of Neolithic life. What social, environmental, or cultural pressures led to this abandonment? And what rituals, stories, or knowledge vanished with the departure of its inhabitants, leaving only stone walls and hearths as evidence of a once thriving settlement? From the windswept stone homes of Skara Brae, where Neolithic Europeans mastered the art of integrating architecture into the environment with precision and subtlety, our exploration now turns across the Atlantic to the highlands of Peru, where the Kotosh temple complex rises amidst the misty Andes. Perched near the banks of the Huallaga River, Kotosh presents one of South America's most intriguing examples of early stone architecture, dating as far back as 2000 BCE, centuries before the rise of the famed Inca civilization. Here, in the thin, crisp air of the highlands, ancient builders shaped stone and earth into structures whose purpose and symbolism continue to confound archaeologists and historians alike. The core of Kotosh is renowned for its Temple of the Crossed Hands, a mud brick and stone structure featuring a unique altar adorned with carved motifs of crossed arms, a design unparalleled in the region. The stone walls of the temple are thick, meticulously arranged, and remarkably durable, standing centuries after their initial construction. The precision with which these walls were built, fitted with irregular yet interlocking stones, suggests advanced knowledge of load distribution and structural stability achieved without modern tools or formal engineering techniques. How did these early Andean societies conceive such architectural sophistication so early in the region's history? And what cultural or spiritual principles guided the builders as they worked with mud, stone, and labor to create structures meant to endure? Excavations at Kotosh have revealed multiple construction phases, indicating continuous use and modification over centuries. Layers of floors, walls, and ritual artifacts demonstrate that the site was more than a simple dwelling or communal space. It was a locus of ceremonial activity, a spiritual and social hub. Yet, despite extensive study, the precise rituals performed here, the beliefs they expressed, and the societal hierarchy that enabled the construction remain shrouded in mystery. Why were the structures deliberately designed with such architectural uniformity and repeated motifs? Could the crossed hands symbol have conveyed ideas of cosmology, governance, or communal identity, encoded into stone for future generations to witness? The location of Kotosh itself adds to its enigmatic character. Nestled between river valleys and rugged Andean peaks, the site is both defensible and symbolic, dominating the surrounding landscape while offering access to vital resources. The careful orientation of the structures suggests intentional alignment, perhaps linked to solar, lunar, or seasonal cycles. Could the temple have functioned as an early astronomical observatory, mapping celestial movements to guide agricultural, ritual, or social planning? Or was its design primarily a reflection of ritual practice, an earthly representation of cosmological ideas visible to all who approached? One of the most striking features of Kotosh is the consistency of its construction techniques across centuries. Builders created walls and floors with precise layering of stone and mud, integrating natural rock formations into the architecture itself. The effort required to transport, shape, and arrange stone in such a rugged environment points to a society with not only technical skill, but also social organization capable of coordinating labor over generations. Who guided this effort? What cultural, spiritual, or practical imperatives inspired repeated construction and maintenance in a place so removed from the major valleys and lowland civilizations? Speculative interpretations abound, though none are fully confirmed. Some researchers suggest that Kotosh may have served as a ceremonial or ritual center for early Andean populations, a place where religious authority intersected with political power. Others propose that the site's architecture reflects a symbolic mapping of the surrounding landscape, a terrestrial manifestation of spiritual or cosmological order. Could the crossed hands motif symbolize a covenant, a societal code, or a form of communication with the unseen forces of the Andes? The ambiguity of the evidence invites reflection, highlighting the thin line between practical construction and symbolic expression in early societies. Environmental challenges would have made construction at Kotosh exceptionally demanding. The high-altitude location is subject to seasonal rainfall, frost, and seismic activity, yet the structures have endured with remarkable resilience. This durability implies not only sophisticated construction techniques, but also an intimate understanding of the local environment. How did these early builders adapt architectural methods to ensure long-term stability? And what knowledge about materials, weather, and landscape was preserved or lost over centuries, leaving only the stone and mud of Kotosh as witnesses to a vanished culture? Walking among the walls and terraces of Kotosh today, one feels the enduring presence of human intention. The stones, meticulously arranged and partially embedded in the earth, convey both labor and vision. Yet the people themselves are absent, leaving only the architecture as testament. Each wall, each carved motif suggests purpose and meaning, yet much remains hidden. The exact rituals, social hierarchies, and symbolic interpretations that guided construction have been lost to time. What daily lives unfolded here? What knowledge, beliefs, and practices were encoded in stone for generations to witness, even as the builders themselves disappeared into history? Kotosh, like Skara Brae, Tepe Sialk, Aguada Fénix, and Loropeni before it, reminds us that human societies have always sought to imprint intention, order, and meaning upon the landscape. Monumental architecture is rarely just functional. It embodies social coordination, technical knowledge, and symbolic thought. Yet, Kotosh is unique in its combination of ritual artistry, structural precision, and enduring mystery, bridging the gap between practical human need and spiritual expression. As the wind sweeps through the highland valleys, stirring dust across stone floors and terraces, Kotosh stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges assumptions about early Andean societies, revealing a sophistication that belies the apparent simplicity of the landscape. And yet, despite careful study, fundamental questions endure. Why were these structures designed with such deliberate geometry and symbolic motifs? How did early Andean builders transmit technical and ritual knowledge across generations? And what hidden insights about society, spirituality, and cosmology remain buried beneath layers of stone and earth, waiting to illuminate the minds of the people who first shaped this extraordinary complex? In Kotosh, as in the other ancient sites we have explored, from Skara Brae and Tepe Sialk to Aguada Fénix and Loropeni, the past speaks through stone and mud, through terraces and walls, offering fragments of human vision that endure across millennia. It is a quiet invitation to study, reflect, and wonder at the ingenuity, ambition, and imagination of civilizations whose knowledge was encoded into monumental forms, even when their people have long vanished. From the highland temples of Kotosh, where Andean communities meticulously integrated stone, mud, and symbolism into enduring structures, our journey now turns northeast across the Asian continent to the arid plains of Balochistan in modern-day Pakistan. Here lies Mehrgarh, one of the earliest known centers of human settlement in South Asia, where evidence of stone architecture emerges as early as 7000 BCE, predating the rise of the Indus Valley Civilization by millennia. In this sun-baked landscape, the remains of stone and mud brick structures rise modestly from the earth, yet their quiet endurance tells of a society that combined innovation, ritual, and survival in remarkable ways. At the heart of Mehrgarh are its stone-built dwellings, some circular, some rectangular, arranged in clusters that suggest careful planning and social organization. Walls constructed from irregular stones and mud were designed to withstand both the harsh seasonal extremes of the region and the passage of time. Excavations reveal floors smoothed with clay, hearths precisely placed for communal use, and drainage channels that hint at an understanding of water management long before sophisticated engineering appeared elsewhere. How did these early people, lacking formalized urban planning, conceive of space in a way that balanced domestic comfort, communal needs, and environmental realities? Mehrgarh is remarkable not only for its durability, but for the complexity embedded within its seeming simplicity. The stone and mud brick structures show evidence of repeated rebuilding and repair, indicating long-term occupation and careful maintenance. Some buildings appear to have served ritual purposes, suggested by the presence of altars, painted walls, and carefully arranged artifacts. Could the architecture itself have been an expression of social hierarchy, spiritual belief, or collective identity? And if so, how did such knowledge about construction, ritual practice, and social organization survive and transmit across generations in a pre-literate society? The location of Mehrgarh provides clues, yet deepens the mystery. Situated near the Bolan Pass and fertile river valleys, the site offered access to water, trade routes, and arable land. Yet its stone architecture reflects a deliberate investment of labor and resources beyond immediate necessity. Was this construction purely practical, intended to shelter and organize the community, or did it serve as a tangible representation of social cohesion, spiritual order, or territorial claim? Could the choice of durable stone over more perishable materials indicate an early consciousness of permanence, a desire to create structures that would outlast individual lifetimes and communicate the presence of a community across centuries? The craftsmanship of the stonework is striking. Even without sophisticated tools, builders arranged stones into stable, interlocking walls capable of supporting multi-phase occupation. Floors were leveled with care, hearths positioned with intention, and interior spaces designed for functional living while preserving structural integrity. The coordination required suggests not only skilled labor, but also leadership and collective organization, implying a societal structure capable of planning, directing, and sustaining construction projects. How was such knowledge shared? Were there specialized builders or architects? Or did these techniques emerge from communal experience over generations? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest that certain buildings may have had ceremonial or proto-religious functions, serving as centers for communal rites, feasting, or social gathering. Others propose that architectural patterns may reflect an early understanding of cosmology or sacred space, with stone layouts echoing symbolic representations of the cosmos, the seasons or cycles of life and death. Could these structures have encoded knowledge about survival, social coordination, or spiritual belief in ways that remain invisible to us today? And if so, what does this suggest about the cognitive and cultural sophistication of early South Asian communities? Environmental challenges at Mehrgarh make its stone architecture even more remarkable. The region experiences seasonal extremes of heat, sporadic rainfall, and occasional seismic activity. That these structures endured for thousands of years suggests not only practical skill, but also an intimate understanding of materials, terrain, and environmental conditions. How did these early builders combine empirical observation with innovation to create architecture that was both functional and resilient? And what subtle lessons about sustainable construction and human-environment interaction might have been encoded in these walls, only partially understood by modern archaeology? Walking through the remains of Mehrgarh today, one is struck by the intimacy of the spaces and the ingenuity of their design. The stone walls, smoothed floors, and aligned hearths convey deliberate intent, yet the people themselves remain absent, leaving only architecture as witness. Every wall, every carefully arranged stone, hints at knowledge, ritual, and social coordination, yet much remains hidden. The precise daily routines, the ceremonies performed, and the societal hierarchies that guided construction. How did these communities negotiate collective effort, individual needs, and environmental challenges to create enduring spaces of habitation and meaning? Mehrgarh, like Kotosh, Skara, Brae, Tepe, Sialk, and Aguada Fénix before it, reveals a recurring theme in human history: the impulse to shape the world, to leave durable markers of social, spiritual, and technical knowledge, and to create spaces that transcend immediate utility. Its stone architecture is at once functional and enigmatic, preserving both evidence of human skill and traces of lost cultural understanding. As the sun warms the windswept plains of Balochistan, casting long shadows across the low stone walls of Mehrgarh, the site stands as both monument and mystery. It challenges our assumptions about early human settlement, architectural sophistication, and social organization. And yet, despite extensive study, fundamental questions remain. Why were these structures designed with such deliberate geometry and enduring materials? How was architectural, technical, and social knowledge transmitted across generations? And what secrets of daily life, ritual practice, and human ingenuity remain buried beneath layers of earth, waiting to illuminate a civilization that contributed quietly but profoundly to the human story? In Mehrgarh, as in the other ancient sites we have explored, from Kotosh and Skara Brae to Aguada Fénix and Tepe Sialk, the past speaks through stone and mud, through terraces, walls, and hearths. It invites reflection, curiosity, and awe, revealing the ingenuity, ambition, and imagination of civilizations that shaped the ancient world with skill, vision, and enduring mystery. From the enduring stone walls of Mehrgarh, where early South Asian societies shaped mud, stone, and ritual space into durable and enigmatic architecture, our exploration now leads northward across the steppes and mountains of Central Asia to the remote shores of Lake Terraces in southern Siberia. Here lies Por-Bajin, a mysterious megalithic complex perched on an island, its rectangular stone foundations and precise layout a stark contrast to the rugged, isolated landscape surrounding it. Rising from a harsh, wind-swept plateau, Por-Bajin seems almost otherworldly, a structure that asserts human presence in a place that offers neither immediate agricultural bounty nor natural shelter, yet demonstrates remarkable architectural sophistication for its time. Por-Bajin is believed to have been constructed in the 8th century CE, during the Uyghur Khaganate, though the precise purpose of the site remains contested. The rectangular foundations, aligned with near-perfect precision, outline what appears to have been a fortified compound, covering several hectares. Massive stone blocks, carefully cut and fitted without mortar, form walls, terraces, and platforms, while internal divisions suggest a complex of courtyards, buildings, and ceremonial spaces. From above, the layout evokes deliberate symmetry and planning, hinting at a vision that transcends mere utility. How and why did the builders choose this isolated island for such an ambitious project? And what function did it serve in a society known for mobility and nomadic traditions? Archaeologists generally interpret Por-Bajin as a palace, a fortress, or possibly a religious retreat. Yet none of these explanations fully accounts for its design, location, and construction. The stonework reveals mastery of masonry techniques. The blocks are massive, yet interlocking, carefully leveled, and aligned with remarkable precision for a society with limited access to large-scale quarrying tools. Could the effort invested in transporting, cutting, and arranging these stones on an island in the middle of a cold Siberian lake suggest a symbolic or ceremonial function as much as a practical one? And what does the choice of location, remote, exposed, and difficult to access, tell us about the intentions and beliefs of its builders? The environment of Por-Bajin adds layers of intrigue. The island is surrounded by waters that freeze for much of the year, its winds relentless, its soil thin and rocky. Yet the builders managed to erect stone walls, create level foundations, and organize the space with clear geometric precision. Was the isolation of the island chosen deliberately to provide protection, seclusion, or ritual purity? Did the structure serve as a retreat for the elite, a center for administration, or a ceremonial platform linking earthly authority with cosmic or spiritual symbolism? The lack of surviving inscriptions, ceremonial artifacts, or domestic debris leaves these questions tantalizingly unresolved. Internal divisions within Por-Bajin reveal further mysteries. Rooms and courtyards are arranged with regularity, yet their specific functions are unclear. Some walls appear thicker and more fortified, suggesting defensive or storage purposes, while others are lighter, perhaps delineating ceremonial or administrative spaces. Could these architectural choices reflect social hierarchies, ritual pathways, or seasonal occupancy patterns? And how did builders coordinate the labor, resources, and technical knowledge necessary to complete such a structure in a harsh and remote environment? Speculative interpretations have emerged over the decades. Some suggest that Por-Bajin was a summer palace or fortified residence for Uyghur royalty, a symbol of power projected across the steppe. Others propose a monastic or spiritual function, a place removed from the world to conduct ritual observances, meditative practices, or even astronomical monitoring. Could the precise orientation of walls hint at celestial alignment, echoing cosmological principles as seen in other monumental structures around the world? And if so, why leave so little in the way of textual or material record to confirm these possibilities? The construction of Por-Bajin, despite the island's isolation, reflects a remarkable understanding of materials, engineering, and human organization. The stone foundations were laid with care, leveled to ensure stability, and designed to endure the harsh Siberian climate. Yet, even as we marvel at the technical achievement, the human dimension, the vision, the social coordination, and the rituals that drove such construction remains largely invisible. How did the builders conceptualize their work? What social, spiritual, or political imperatives inspired them to transform a barren island into a massive, enduring complex of stone? Walking along the partially excavated foundations today, one is struck by the scale, precision, and mystery of Por-Bajin. The walls, terraces, and rectangular courtyards speak to deliberate planning, labor, and skill, yet the people who built them are absent, their daily lives lost to time. What ceremonies took place here? What knowledge guided the layout, construction, and maintenance of the complex? And why was the site ultimately abandoned, leaving only stone foundations as testimony to a remarkable yet enigmatic endeavor? Por-Bajin, like Mehrgarh, Kotosh, Skara Brae, and Tepe Sialk before it, illustrates a universal human theme: the drive to impose order, intention, and meaning onto the landscape, creating monumental architecture that endures across centuries. Its megalithic walls and terraces are both functional and symbolic, tangible evidence of human skill, labor, and vision. Yet they also preserve profound mysteries, inviting reflection on purpose, culture, and knowledge lost to time. As the winds sweep across Lake Terraces, rustling reeds and whispering along the stone walls, Por-Bajin stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges our understanding of early Uyghur society, of nomadic versus sedentary culture, and of the intersection between architecture, ritual, and authority. And yet, despite centuries of study, fundamental questions persist. Why was this complex constructed on such an isolated island? What knowledge, social coordination, or spiritual intention guided its builders? And what secrets remain buried beneath the stones and terraces, waiting to illuminate the human story behind one of Siberia's most enigmatic megalithic sites? In Por-Bajin, as in the other ancient structures we have explored, from Mehrgarh and Kotosh to Skara Brae and Aguada Fénix, the past speaks quietly but persistently through stone, mud, and earth. It invites us to marvel, reflect, and imagine, reminding us that human ingenuity, ambition, and imagination have long sought to leave a lasting mark on the world, even in the most remote and unforgiving landscapes. From the isolated stone walls of Por-Bajin, rising from the windswept Siberian plateau, our exploration now moves westward across the Arctic expanse to the Solovetsky Islands in the White Sea, Russia. Here, on the largest island, Bolshoi Zayatsky, lie the remnants of prehistoric stone labyrinths, a mysterious collection of low, interwoven walls that form intricate geometric patterns across the landscape. Unlike the massive mud brick and stone structures we have seen in Mehrgarh or the precise foundations of Por-Bajin, these labyrinths are subtle, understated, and enigmatic, their purpose hidden beneath centuries of northern winds, snow, and moss. Yet their presence is undeniable, a deliberate manipulation of stone that hints at ritual, symbolism, and human ingenuity, carefully inscribed into the rugged terrain of the far north. The Bolshoi Zayatsky labyrinths are composed of flat stones laid in concentric, spiral, or meandering patterns, sometimes forming multiple layers of interlinked designs. They vary in size, some no larger than a small room, others stretching tens of meters across the tundra. Dating these structures has proven difficult, though estimates place their construction between 3000 and 2000 BCE, contemporaneous with the early Bronze Age in Europe and the late Neolithic elsewhere. The labyrinth's design, so precise, so repetitive, demonstrates a clear intention. These are not random stone arrangements, but carefully conceived constructions meant to convey meaning, guide movement, or facilitate ritualized activity. What drove communities in this remote northern environment to invest so much effort into creating such ephemeral yet enduring patterns? Mainstream interpretations suggest ritual or religious use. Some scholars propose that the labyrinths were pathways for ceremonial movement, guiding participants through a symbolic journey of transformation or initiation. Others suggest they served as spiritual maps, encoding knowledge of seasonal cycles, hunting patterns, or celestial phenomena. Yet, unlike the stone temples of Mehrgarh or the fortress walls of Por-Bajin, the labyrinths leave almost no material evidence of daily life, no hearths, tools, or settlement debris, making their exact function elusive. Could the labyrinths represent a form of proto-writing or symbolic language, a way of communicating ideas across generations without words? Their location adds another layer of mystery. Perched on coastal ridges, the labyrinths are highly visible yet precariously exposed to harsh northern weather. Winter snows, storms, and wind would have slowly worn away their edges, yet their forms endure, suggesting careful construction and perhaps periodic maintenance. Why place such labor-intensive designs in such a forbidding environment? Was the visibility intended as a statement, a marker of territory or spiritual presence? Or did the labyrinth's remoteness enhance their ritual significance, creating a liminal space between human life and the forces of nature? The architecture of the labyrinths is deceptively simple. Stones are uncut and roughly hewn, yet their placement forms patterns that are geometrically sophisticated. Spirals, interconnected rings, and linear pathways suggest not only aesthetic intention, but a knowledge of symmetry, proportion, and spatial perception. How were these designs conceptualized without written plans or formal measurement systems? Did builders rely on collective memory, observation of nature, or symbolic templates passed orally from one generation to the next? And what knowledge or cosmological understanding was encoded into the very paths of these labyrinths? Speculative theories abound. Some propose that the labyrinths were related to hunting or fishing rituals, guiding participants along symbolic routes to invoke success or appease natural spirits. Others suggest they served as astronomical observatories, with spiral patterns aligned to solar, lunar, or stellar cycles, echoing symbolic motifs found in distant prehistoric sites across Europe and Scandinavia. Could these labyrinths represent a form of sacred geometry, a physical manifestation of belief and cosmology in stone? And if so, how did their creators reconcile the ephemeral nature of ritual with the permanence of stone? The endurance of the labyrinth speaks to human determination and ingenuity. Constructed from local stones, carefully placed on uneven terrain, and repeatedly walked over by generations, the labyrinths are a testament to labor, planning, and cultural continuity. Yet the builders themselves remain silent, leaving only their stone inscriptions as witnesses to their beliefs, practices, and social organization. What ceremonies unfolded along these winding paths? What knowledge guided the placement, orientation, and layering of the stones? And how much of this knowledge has been lost, leaving the labyrinths as enigmatic footprints of a vanished worldview? Walking among the Bolshoi Zayatsky labyrinths today, one is struck by their quiet resonance. Unlike towering ziggurats or expansive platforms, these structures demand reflection and intimacy, inviting one to trace paths with the eye or foot, experiencing a connection to the people who created them. Each stone, each spiral, each linear arrangement conveys intention yet resists definitive interpretation. What human experience, belief, or social structure guided their creation? And how might these labyrinths have mediated the relationship between humans, landscape, and the unseen world? Bolshoi Zayatsky, like Por-Bajin, Mehrgarh, Kotosh, and Skara Brae before it, illustrates a recurring theme across millennia and continents: the human desire to shape the environment in ways that are meaningful, deliberate, and enduring. Its labyrinths are not massive or imposing, yet they endure as evidence of knowledge, ritual, and imagination, preserved in stone and soil. They remind us that monumentalism is not always vertical or monumental in scale. It can also be subtle, deliberate, and profoundly symbolic. As the northern winds sweep across the island, rustling grass and whispering over low stone walls, the Bolshoi Zayatsky labyrinths stand as both achievement and enigma. They challenge assumptions about prehistoric northern societies, revealing sophistication, symbolic thought, and social organization in a landscape that seems inhospitable yet carefully chosen. And yet, despite decades of study, fundamental questions remain. Why were these labyrinths built in these precise forms? What knowledge, ritual, or cosmological understanding guided their creation? And what remains hidden beneath stones, moss, and time, waiting to illuminate the lives and minds of the people who traced paths across this remote island thousands of years ago? In Bolshoi Zayatsky, as in the other ancient sites we have explored, from Por-Bajin and Mehrgarh to Skara Brae and Aguada Fénix, the past communicates quietly through stone, earth, and pattern, inviting us to marvel, reflect, and wonder at the ingenuity, vision, and mystery of civilizations that sought to leave a mark upon the world, even in the farthest reaches of human habitation. From the labyrinthine stones of Bolshoi Zayatsky, where northern communities etched intricate patterns into the tundra, our journey now leads far to the south, across oceans and equatorial seas, to the volcanic highlands of western Java, Indonesia. Here rises Gunung Padang, a hill whose slopes conceal one of the most enigmatic megalithic complexes in Southeast Asia. At first glance, It appears to be a simple natural formation, a volcanic hill covered with boulders. Yet closer examination reveals an astonishing human imprint. Terraces, steps, and massive volcanic stone blocks arranged in deliberate patterns, forming what many consider the largest megalithic site in the Indonesian archipelago. Gunung Padang is unique in both scale and form. Thousands of stone blocks, ranging from modest slabs to enormous boulders weighing several tons, are carefully arranged across a series of stepped terraces ascending the hill. The terraces are reinforced by dry stone walls, their alignment and interlocking stones demonstrating an understanding of load, stability, and geometry that is striking for prehistoric construction. Mainstream estimates suggest construction between 2500 and 1500 BCE, yet radiocarbon and stratigraphic studies hint at the possibility of older, deeply buried foundations, suggesting a history of human activity that may extend far further into prehistory. Could this hill, which blends natural and artificial elements, have been continuously reshaped by generations of builders, each adding layers of human intention atop volcanic rock? The purpose of Gunung Padang remains profoundly mysterious. Some researchers describe it as a ceremonial or ritual center, a place of gathering, veneration, or cosmological observance. Others interpret the terraces as residential or administrative spaces, though the sheer labor involved in moving and positioning massive stones atop a volcanic hill challenges conventional assumptions about early societies in the region. How did these communities organize labor, transport, and planning with such precision in a tropical environment prone to earthquakes, rainfall, and erosion? And what motivated them to dedicate such immense effort to a site that rises dramatically from the surrounding landscape, visible for miles yet demanding in both construction and maintenance? The stones themselves are remarkable. Many are rectangular, carefully shaped, and positioned to interlock or stabilize terraces. Some blocks appear to have been carved or fitted with surface smoothing, creating flat planes and regular edges. While the site contains few inscriptions or identifiable carvings beyond simple geometric forms, the repetition, alignment, and layering suggest deliberate design. Could the layout reflect symbolic cosmology, astronomical observation, or sacred geometry, encoded in stone to survive generations? Or was the labor itself, the act of shaping and arranging these boulders, a form of ritual devotion, as meaningful as any architectural end product? Environmental and geological considerations deepen the intrigue. Gunung Padang sits atop volcanic rock, part of an active tectonic region. Excavations reveal terraces extending down the slopes and possibly layered foundations buried beneath collapsed boulders, indicating a multi-phase construction history. The site may have been continuously adapted and reinforced over centuries, or even millennia, suggesting not a single monumental effort but an ongoing dialogue between humans and the landscape. How did these ancient builders understand the stability of their terraces, the orientation of their blocks, or the resilience of their structures against natural forces? And how did they conceptualize the hill itself, blending human agency with the natural volcanic forms around them? Speculative interpretations have emerged alongside mainstream archaeological research. Some suggest that Gunung Padang was intentionally designed to align with cardinal points or celestial events, reflecting knowledge of the sun, stars, or lunar cycles. Others hypothesize that deeply buried layers, potentially older than the visible terraces, indicate an earlier unknown culture with advanced engineering capabilities. Could it be that the hill's visible surface represents only a fragment of a far older, monumental endeavor, a story of human ingenuity obscured by time, vegetation, and volcanic soil? And if so, what other mysteries remain hidden beneath the massive stones, waiting to reveal the sophistication and intent of ancient builders? The scale of labor at Gunung Padang is staggering, moving enormous volcanic boulders up steep slopes, arranging them in stepped terraces, and reinforcing the foundations with dry stone walls would have required not only physical effort, but meticulous planning, coordination, and knowledge of structural principles. Yet no written record survives. How did communities transmit this knowledge across generations? Were there specialized builders, ritual leaders, or master planners guiding the work? Or did collective memory and communal practice suffice to achieve such enduring results? Walking across the terraces today, one is struck by both the immensity and intimacy of Gunung Padang. Each boulder, each step, each terrace speaks to deliberate intention, yet the human presence that created this monumental site is silent. What rituals unfolded here? What cosmological understanding or symbolic knowledge guided terrace placement? And how did the builders conceive of their work as both functional and sacred, practical, yet profoundly meaningful? Gunung Padang, like Bolshoi, Zayatsky, Por-Bajin, Mehrgarh, and Kotosh before it, reminds us that human societies across time and space have consistently sought to shape their environment in ways that endure beyond individual lifetimes. Its terraces are simultaneously practical, ceremonial, and mysterious, a testament to labor, skill, and vision, yet leaving fundamental questions unanswered. As tropical winds stir leaves and moss around volcanic stone, Gunung Padang stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges our understanding of prehistoric Southeast Asia, of social organization, engineering knowledge, and the human capacity for monumental design. And yet, despite extensive research, fundamental questions endure. Who envisioned and built this extraordinary complex? How did they organize labor, materials, and knowledge to construct terraces that defy simple explanation? And what lies buried beneath the stones, still waiting to reveal the deeper story of one of the world's most enigmatic megalithic sites? In Gunung Padang, as in the other ancient structures we have explored, from Bolshoi, Zayatsky, and Por-Bajin to Mehrgarh and Skara Brae, the past speaks quietly but insistently, through stone, earth, and pattern. It invites us to reflect, to imagine, and to marvel at the vision, ingenuity, and enduring mystery of civilizations that sought to leave a mark on the world, even when centuries of time and nature have tried to conceal it. From the volcanic terraces of Gunung Padang, where ancient hands shaped boulders into enduring patterns across a misty Indonesian highland, our journey now moves westward across the Mediterranean, to the sun-drenched island of Cyprus. Here lies Khirokitia, one of the most remarkable and enigmatic Neolithic settlements of the eastern Mediterranean. Perched on a gently sloping hill above the Moroni River Valley, Khirokitia's stone structures emerge from the landscape with a quiet authority, their circular forms, low walls, and clustered arrangement preserving the whispers of a society that flourished more than 7,000 years ago. At first glance, Khirokitia appears almost deceptively simple. Compact circular houses, built from local stone, grouped in tight communal clusters, with narrow alleyways weaving between them. Yet every detail of the site conveys careful planning, technical skill, and social organization. The walls, though modest in height, are thick and stable, often reinforced with carefully stacked stone and mud mortar. Floors are occasionally smoothed with clay, hearths are precisely positioned, and some houses contain small stone platforms whose purpose remains uncertain. What motivated these early settlers to invest so much effort into creating durable, communal architecture in a relatively isolated Mediterranean valley? And what social or ritual functions did these clustered circular dwellings serve? Khirokitia is particularly notable for the uniformity of its structures. The circular houses follow a consistent plan. Internal diameter rarely exceeds 5 to 6 meters, with stone benches or platforms built along the interior walls, sometimes encircling a central hearth. The precision and repetition suggest not only an understanding of construction, but also shared cultural or social principles guiding the settlement. Was this uniformity purely practical, optimizing space and stability, or did it express social cohesion, hierarchy, or ritual practice? Could the very geometry of these homes, rounded, inward-focused, communal, reflect a worldview encoded in stone, walls, and hearths? Excavations have revealed multiple phases of construction and rebuilding, indicating that Khirokitia was continuously inhabited over centuries. Yet its ultimate abandonment remains mysterious. There are no signs of violent destruction, mass migration, or environmental catastrophe directly linked to the site. Did the settlement simply dwindle over time as communities shifted toward other valleys? Or were there social or ritual imperatives that dictated its eventual desertion? And what knowledge, traditions, or skills were lost when these circular stone homes were left behind, their walls reduced to ruins and fragments? The layout of Khirokitia suggests careful planning at both micro and macro scales. Narrow lanes and shared walls indicate an understanding of communal living, circulation, and perhaps even defense. Houses were clustered closely, yet arranged with enough space to allow daily activity and social interaction. Could the settlement itself have been a physical manifestation of social organization, where stone walls guided human movement, ritual, and hierarchy? And what can the careful orientation of certain houses or platforms tell us about the interplay between domestic life, seasonal cycles, and cosmological observation? Despite decades of study, the purpose of some architectural features at Khirokitia remains elusive. Stone platforms, interior niches, and external walls defy simple explanation. Some may have had ritual or symbolic significance, while others likely supported practical domestic or storage functions. Could the very act of construction, shaping local stone into circular forms, arranging dwellings in clustered patterns, have been imbued with cultural meaning, creating a sense of identity, belonging, or spiritual resonance for the inhabitants? And if so, how was this knowledge communicated across generations in a pre-literate society? The human presence at Khirokitia is palpable yet intangible. Walk through the remains today, and the circular foundations evoke both intimacy and mystery. The walls speak of communal life, hearths of shared warmth, and stone platforms of daily activity, yet the people themselves have long vanished. What conversations took place along these narrow alleys? What rituals, celebrations, or daily routines unfolded within these compact circular homes? And how did the physical structure of Khirokitia shape human behavior, belief, and social interaction in ways we can only imagine? Khirokitia, like Gunung Padang, Bolshoi, Zayatsky, Por-Bajin, and Mehrgarh before it, reminds us of a fundamental human impulse to create enduring structures that blend practical utility with social and symbolic meaning. Its circular stone houses, simple yet sophisticated, are at once functional, communal, and enigmatic, preserving traces of social cohesion, technical skill, and cultural imagination. And yet, as with all these ancient sites, mysteries endure. What drove early Mediterranean communities to organize life in this particular way? How did they transmit architectural knowledge, social norms, and ritual practice across generations? And what deeper insights into human cognition, community, and worldview remain hidden beneath the stone walls of Khirokitia? Walking amidst the low circular foundations today, the quiet of the Moroni Valley is punctuated only by the wind and the occasional bird. The stones of Khirokitia endure as mute witnesses to thousands of years of human life, thought, and organization, yet their meaning remains partially obscured. Were these homes primarily domestic shelters, ritual spaces, or both? How did the inhabitants perceive the world around them, and how did they inscribe that understanding into stone, hearth, and communal layout? And, perhaps most provocatively, what has been lost to time, leaving us only with fragments of architecture to interpret, wonder about, and admire. In Khirokitia, as in the other ancient structures we have explored, from Gunung Padang and Bolshoi Zayatsky to Skara Brae and Aguada Fénix, the past speaks not in words but in stone, earth, and spatial pattern. It invites us to observe carefully, reflect thoughtfully, and marvel at the ingenuity, organization, and enduring mystery of early human civilizations, whose vision continues to challenge our understanding of what is possible in the prehistoric world. From the sunlit circular homes of Khirokitia, where Neolithic Cypriot communities carefully shaped stone into compact, communal dwellings, our journey now leads across the Mediterranean Sea to the Maltese archipelago. Here, on the rugged hilltops of central Malta, lies Talkadi, an enigmatic complex of stone platforms that rises quietly above the surrounding plains. Unlike towering temples or massive fortifications, Talkadi presents a subtle, understated architecture. Layered stone terraces, low walls, and flat platforms carved directly from the native limestone, forming a spatial arrangement that is both deliberate and mysterious. In this landscape, where light and shadow dance across weathered rock, the site exudes a quiet authority, a monument to skill, organization, and unknown intent. Talkadi is notable for the arrangement of its terraces and platforms. Unlike nearby megalithic temples such as Hagar-Chim or Mnajdra, the site lacks large upright stones or monumental facades, yet its design is far from accidental. Platforms are carefully leveled, bounded by low retaining walls, and connected by paths that suggest functional circulation and deliberate zoning. Some areas may have served as spaces for gathering, ritual, or ceremonial practice, while others appear more domestic or utilitarian. How did prehistoric Maltese communities conceive of this complex, balancing practical construction with symbolic or social purpose? And why invest in creating such carefully engineered spaces atop a hill with panoramic views of the surrounding valleys? The construction techniques at Talkadi are deceptively simple but technically sophisticated. Platforms were carved or leveled directly from the bedrock, stabilized with dry stone walls, and occasionally reinforced with additional limestone blocks. The alignment of terraces, though subtle, indicates attention to spatial order, load distribution, and long-term durability. How did builders with limited tools and no written records achieve such precise leveling and layering? And did the very act of crafting these terraces serve as a ritualized practice, where labor, stone, and community were woven together into a shared cultural expression? Talkadi's purpose remains shrouded in ambiguity. Mainstream interpretations suggest that it may have functioned as a ritual or ceremonial site, perhaps serving as a precursor to larger temple complexes on the island. Some archaeologists hypothesize that it could have been a center for communal gatherings, seasonal celebrations, or agricultural rites, reflecting early Maltese understanding of cosmic or natural cycles. Yet the absence of definitive altars, inscriptions, or artifacts makes any conclusion tentative. Could the site also have served as a political or social hub, a physical expression of hierarchy and territorial identity? Or was it primarily symbolic, intended to anchor communal memory and cultural cohesion in stone? The placement of Talkadi adds another layer of intrigue. Situated atop a gently sloping hill, the site is both visually commanding and geographically strategic, offering sweeping views of surrounding valleys and the distant coastline. Was this elevation chosen for practical reasons, defense, visibility, or oversight of agricultural land? Or did the hill itself hold sacred or cosmological significance? Could the platforms have been designed to interact with the sun, moon, or stars, marking solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial events, as seen at other megalithic sites in Malta and beyond? Speculative interpretations extend beyond simple ritual. Some researchers suggest that Talkati may have been a proto-temple complex, laying the groundwork for the later monumental architecture of Maltese prehistory. Others propose that the terraces were part of a ceremonial landscape, guiding processions, performance, or social interaction in ways now obscured by time. Could it be that the very layering of stone, platform upon platform, was intended to encode social or cosmological knowledge, visible only to those initiated into the cultural or spiritual practices of the community? The human element at Talkati is subtly but powerfully present. The careful leveling of stone, the planning of terraces, and the interrelation of spaces all speak to a society capable of coordinated effort, technical skill, and spatial understanding. Yet, as with many prehistoric sites, the builders themselves remain silent, leaving only traces of intention embedded in stone. How did knowledge of construction, alignment, and social coordination pass from one generation to the next? Were there designated builders, ritual specialists, or community elders guiding the work? Or did collective memory and observation suffice to sustain architectural continuity? Walking across the flat platforms today, one is struck by the balance of utility and symbolism. Each terrace, each retaining wall, each carefully leveled surface conveys deliberate thought. Yet the precise function of spaces remains elusive. What ceremonies, gatherings, or daily activities unfolded here? How did the terraces shape human behavior, interaction, and perception of space? And what has been lost? Intangible knowledge, ritual practice, or social structure that might illuminate the full significance of Talkati. Talkati, like Khirokitia, Gunung Padang, Bolshoi Zayatsky, and Skara Brae before it, exemplifies the human drive to manipulate the landscape in ways that endure, blend utility with symbolism, and leave a lasting mark on the environment. Its stone platforms are quiet yet potent, simultaneously practical, communal, and enigmatic, revealing the technical skill, social organization, and imaginative capacity of prehistoric communities. And yet, despite careful study, the fundamental questions endure. Why were these terraces constructed in this precise formation? How did they influence social, ritual, or cosmological understanding? And what secrets lie buried beneath centuries of soil and erosion, waiting to illuminate a world long vanished from view? As sunlight washes the limestone surfaces and shadows stretch across Talkati's terraces, the site stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges our understanding of prehistoric Maltese society, of architectural knowledge, and of the interplay between human effort, communal organization, and symbolic intention. And yet, as with all ancient structures we have explored, from Khirokitia and Gunung Padang to Bolshoi Zayatsky and Por-Bajin, the past continues to speak, quietly, insistently, and mysteriously, inviting reflection, curiosity, and wonder. In Talkati, stone, earth, and spatial pattern converge to tell a story of human ingenuity, vision, and enduring mystery, one that challenges us to look, question, and imagine what might still lie hidden beneath the terraces, preserved in silence for thousands of years. From the sunlit terraces of Talkati, where prehistoric communities shaped stone to craft enduring platforms and ritualized spaces in the heart of Malta, our journey now moves far across the Americas, to the arid coastal hills of northern Peru. Here, rising from the desert sands of the Casma Valley, lies Chanquillo, a site whose early phase reveals the first traces of what would become one of the most extraordinary astronomical complexes of the ancient world. Even today, the desert wind carries a sense of stillness and antiquity across the ridges, where low stone constructions hint at an early understanding of time, sky, and human observation. The Chanquillo early phase predates the monumental 13 towers that dominate the site in later centuries, yet its foundations already demonstrate deliberate planning, technical skill, and a conceptual grasp of spatial and temporal order. Excavations reveal stone platforms, circular and rectangular constructions, and carefully arranged terraces that suggest communal, ceremonial, or observational functions. These structures are modest in scale compared to the later towers, yet their placement is far from random, hinting at early experimentation with the alignment of the sun, moon, or horizon markers. How did the builders conceptualize their landscape, anticipating the more elaborate astronomical functions that would emerge in subsequent generations? Archaeologists estimate that the early phase of Chankilo may date as far back as 900 BCE, making it a critical window into the origins of Andean observational and ceremonial practices. The construction techniques are meticulous. Terraces are leveled from natural rock, platforms are reinforced with dry stone walls, and pathways are aligned to facilitate movement across the complex. The early phase demonstrates that the Chankilo builders were already invested in the labor-intensive work of shaping the terrain to suit both practical and possibly symbolic purposes. What drove these early communities to invest so much effort into structuring the landscape in ways that intersected with time, light, and horizon observation? The function of the early phase remains elusive. Some researchers suggest that the platforms and terraces served as proto-ritual spaces, where early ceremonies were performed to mark agricultural cycles, seasonal change, or communal rites of passage. Others hypothesize that certain alignments may have functioned as early solar markers, anticipating the 13 towers' later role in tracking the sun's movement across the horizon. Yet with limited artifacts and few surviving inscriptions, we are left to interpret patterns in stone, terraces, and sightlines, asking ourselves, were these early constructions purely functional, or did they already encode symbolic knowledge of the cosmos? The site's desert environment adds to the intrigue. The arid soil, minimal vegetation, and exposure to seasonal winds would have presented considerable challenges to builders, from quarrying stone to leveling terraces. Yet the structures endure, revealing a keen understanding of stability, orientation, and the relationship between architecture and environment. Could the location itself have been chosen for visibility, horizon alignment, or ritual seclusion? And how did the builders perceive the desert landscape? Not as a barren expanse, but as a canvas for measuring time, marking celestial events, and embedding human intention. The early phase also demonstrates a subtle interplay between communal life and spatial order. Platforms and terraces suggest gathering areas or ritual focal points, yet the clustering and pathways hint at coordination, hierarchy, and social organization. Was there a specific protocol for movement across these terraces, a sequence to how people engaged with the space, perhaps dictated by ceremonial or observational practices? Could the very layout of the early phase reflect a cognitive map of the cosmos, a way for early Andean societies to order their environment according to celestial cycles? Speculative interpretations invite even more profound questions. Some scholars propose that Chankilo's early phase represents a transitional stage, where architecture and astronomy began to intertwine, forming the conceptual foundation for the 13 towers. Others suggest that the site may have functioned as a ceremonial landscape, where alignment with sunrises, sunsets, and seasonal shifts was as much ritualized as practical. Could it be that these early builders were experimenting with time itself, measuring, predicting, and ritualizing its passage through the structured manipulation of stone and terrace? And if so, what knowledge did they pass on to later generations that allowed the site to evolve into one of the earliest known solar observatories in the Americas? Walking among the terraces today, the quiet of the Chasma Desert is palpable. Low walls and platforms endure as subtle markers of human presence, yet their original context, ceremonial protocols, and cognitive significance are largely obscured. What ceremonies or observations took place here? How did early builders conceptualize the horizon, the sun, or the passing of seasons. And how much has been lost to millennia of wind, erosion, and human change, leaving only these tentative traces of ingenuity, observation, and intention. Chankilo's early phase, like Talkadi, Khirokitia, Gunung Padang, and Bolshoi. Zayatsky before it exemplifies a universal human impulse to impose order on the landscape, to mark time, to create spaces that endure beyond individual lifetimes, and to encode knowledge, ritual, and vision into stone. Its terraces and platforms may be modest in appearance, yet they represent a sophisticated understanding of construction, spatial organization, and the interplay between human society and the cosmos. As the desert sun rises over the Kasma Valley, casting long shadows across terraces and stone foundations, the early phase of Chankilo stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges our understanding of early Andean communities, their technical knowledge, and their conceptualization of time, space, and ritual. And yet, despite decades of study, essential questions remain. What inspired these early builders to shape stone in alignment with the sun? How did they communicate knowledge of celestial cycles without writing? And what secrets, buried beneath the sand and terraces, might one day illuminate the earliest astronomical and ritual practices of the Americas? In Chankilo, as in all the ancient structures we have explored, from Talkadi and Khirokitia to Gunung Padang and Por-Bajin, the past speaks quietly through stone, terrace, and alignment. It invites us to pause, to consider, and to wonder at the ingenuity, intention, and mystery of human societies that, even millennia ago, sought to measure the heavens and leave their mark upon the earth. From the sun-baked terraces of Chankilo, where ancient Andean societies first measured the movement of the sun across the horizon, our journey now sweeps northwest across the Asian continent to the fertile valleys of northern Tajikistan. Here, at the confluence of the Zaravshan River, lies Sarazm, one of Central Asia's earliest and most enigmatic settlements. Unlike Chankilo's desert terraces or Gunung Padang's volcanic platforms, Sarazm presents a complex mosaic of stone architecture interwoven with agricultural terraces, defensive walls, and densely clustered habitation spaces. The landscape, punctuated by low hills and flowing waters, offers both a practical setting for early settlement and a canvas for extraordinary architectural experimentation. The Sarazm stone complex is remarkable not only for its scale, but also for its sophisticated use of local stone. Rectangular and circular buildings, some reinforced with stone foundations and mud brick superstructures, are arranged in an organized network that speaks to careful planning and an understanding of communal organization. Walls are thick and durable. Streets and courtyards appear intentionally oriented, and some areas feature large stone slabs whose purpose remains obscure. Was Sarazm primarily a hub of agriculture and trade, or did it also serve ceremonial or ritual functions, encoded subtly within its stone foundations? And how did early communities coordinate the movement of labor, material, and knowledge across such a complex network of structures? Archaeological evidence dates Sarazm to roughly 3000 to 2500 BCE, situating it firmly in the late Neolithic to early Bronze Age. Excavations reveal a society capable of sustained urban planning, with specialized areas for living, production, and possibly ritual activity. The density and complexity of the stone structures suggest social stratification and collective effort far beyond what one might expect for a settlement of this era in Central Asia. How did communities conceptualize space, hierarchy, and social interaction? And to what extent was stone architecture a reflection of identity, power, or belief? The terraces and stone arrangements of Sarazm also raise profound questions about ritual and cosmology. Certain clusters of stones and platforms appear deliberately aligned or clustered in ways that suggest symbolic intention. Could these arrangements have served as focal points for ceremony, observation, or communal gatherings? Might they encode an early understanding of seasonal cycles, celestial events, or agricultural rhythms, subtly intertwining human activity with the patterns of the natural world? The absence of inscriptions or direct markers leaves these questions tantalizingly open, allowing the stone forms themselves to speak, silently, across millennia. Sarazm's architecture also reveals a nuanced understanding of construction and material properties. Stone foundations are carefully leveled, walls are reinforced against erosion and seismic activity, and terraces are integrated with natural slopes to manage water flow and structural stability. These features hint at knowledge of engineering principles that may have been transmitted orally or through apprenticeship, long before formalized architectural treatises. How did early Sarazm communities acquire, preserve, and adapt this knowledge across generations? And what drove them to invest in durable construction when simpler, more ephemeral dwellings might have sufficed? The site's location underscores its strategic and symbolic significance. Positioned near fertile river valleys yet exposed to the surrounding hills, Sarazm could oversee agricultural production, trade routes, and regional interaction. Some researchers suggest that stone platforms and fortified areas were deliberately designed to assert social or political control, projecting both practical authority and communal identity. Others speculate that the stone complexes had ritual or cosmological resonance, marking sacred spaces or delineating ceremonial zones within the settlement. Could Sarazm's planners have sought to integrate the spiritual, the social, and the practical within a single, cohesive architectural vision? Speculative interpretations extend further. Some archaeologists propose that Sarazm represents an early form of proto-urbanism, where trade, ritual, and social hierarchy converged in stone-built form. Others suggest that certain terraces and stone arrangements may have functioned as calendrical or astronomical markers, aligning with solstices, equinoxes, or riverine cycles, hinting at knowledge of celestial phenomena embedded within everyday life. Could the labor and arrangement of stone itself have been ritualized, an act of devotion and communal identity as much as functional construction? Walking through the remains of Sarazm today, one is struck by the interplay of intimacy and monumentality. The low stone walls and terraces invite close observation, yet the scale of planning and labor evokes a profound sense of human ambition and foresight. Each stone, each platform, each cluster of walls conveys deliberate intention, yet their precise functions remain elusive. What daily life unfolded within these walls? What rituals, gatherings, or observances punctuated the rhythms of Sarazm's community? And what has been lost to time, leaving only the faint outline of a civilization whose understanding of space, society, and the cosmos we can only begin to imagine? Sarazm, like Chankilo, Khirokitia, Talkadi, and Gunung Padang before it, exemplifies the human drive to leave enduring marks upon the landscape. Its stone terraces, walls, and platforms are simultaneously functional, social, and symbolic, demonstrating the ingenuity, vision, and organizational capability of a society whose story continues to elude full understanding. And yet, the questions remain. Why were these structures arranged in this precise configuration? How did Sarazm's inhabitants conceptualize the relationship between stone, human activity, and natural cycles? And what knowledge or ritual practice has been lost beneath centuries of soil and stone, waiting for discovery? As the wind sweeps across the river valley and dust settles on terraces and walls, the Sarazm stone complex stands as both achievement and enigma. It challenges assumptions about the capabilities of early Central Asian societies, the sophistication of prehistoric construction, and the interplay between daily life, ritual, and cosmic observation. And yet, as with all ancient sites we have explored, from Chankillo and Talkadi to Khirokitia and Gunung Padang, the past speaks quietly through stone, terrace, and spatial arrangement, inviting reflection, curiosity, and wonder at the ingenuity, vision, and enduring mystery of early civilizations.